Welcome into the budget review meeting for May 9th for the FY18 budget. And I know you missed us, so we're back already after a short break from a council meeting this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to our finance director, Angelica.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. What I provided today is an updated copy of the FY18 recommended budget review session schedule. We have first on the agenda, community reinvestment, next parks and recreation, followed by human resources and risk management. We have the coroner making a presentation today, as well as a transportation project update from our Deputy City Manager, Pam Hodge, a vehicle replacement discussion to be given by Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin, and we also slated some time to just go over these reclassifications that were proposed in the mayor's recommended budget, followed by a brief health care update from our Human Resources Director, Retha Hollowell. Also, what I provided for council today is the add-delete list based on the items that have been placed on the list. So it's as of the last budget review session. Currently where it stands is 61.01 of estimated fund balance days. I've also provided council the responses to the questions and requests from the May 2nd, 2017 meeting as it relates to the vehicle replacement listing for public safety that's attached to that document as attachment A, and I'm still waiting on the information for the other requests. So without further ado, first up on the agenda is community reinvestment.
Thank you, Angela. And I would remind the Budget Review Committee that because we're starting a little bit early, but we are going to try to keep a brisk pace. So I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to keep you guys to where you can get out of here before morning. And if you have a question or you want to go back and visit something, just holler and we'll do that. Ms. Johnson?
All righty. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This year, I just wanted to first show what revenues we project for fiscal year 18. So we're looking at, as of right now, we still have not been notified of our final allocations for next year. We have, however, been notified that they've been approved. We just don't know the amount yet. So although they've been approved, I think at the exact same amount that the federal government approved them last year, our allocations may slightly be different, but we probably won't find out the exact allocation till the end of June, or they said probably around July 3rd. But they told us, as far as doing our action plan and all, to just use what we had last year, so that's what we're doing. So for community development block grant funding, we're anticipating about $1.3 million, which is the same as last year. Home Investment Partnership Program funding, $645,000, which is the same as last year as well. CDBG and home program income and carryover funds at about $474,000. The real estate part about $139,000, which is exactly the same as last year. And we also have some program income out there that's through the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. That was a program that was administered a few years back. It started in 2008, and this is the funding that was returned to the city as part of that program. So it's sitting in the bank, and so we're looking at a way to utilize that funding this next fiscal year. So for the community development block grant, as I stated, we're about $1.3 million in entitlement, and then about $321,000 in projected program income and carryover funds for a total of about $1.65 million. So as of right now, we have about $281,000 of this money allocated for administration, which does cover salaries, of course, but it also covers cost allocations, it covers travel, office supplies, all of that comes out of this $281,658. As of right now, our current budgeted employees include 1 director, 1 program manager, 1 finance manager, 2 community reinvestment coordinators, 1 part-time clerical. So the number of employees that are approved for fiscal year 2017 will not change in fiscal year 2018. So for the program and operations with the CDBG funds, we're looking at our final payment to the Housing Authority for the Booker T. Washington Columbus Commons redevelopment in the amount of $500,000. That's the last payment of CDBG funds. We've already expended $1 million towards that project. We have demolition in the amount of $76,000, public service grants, $214,000. We're looking at trying to allocate some funding towards an economic development business incubator project. We had a proposal come in, and they're requesting $150,000 for renovations of the actual incubator space. We are looking at re-implementing our Project CARE minor home repair program, and we're allocating $307,000 to that program. And then lastly, we've been approached by several cities have an economic development small business revolving loan fund. It looks as if we had one of these in the past. So we're looking at trying that program out again, but we would only be allocating about $120,000 towards it at this time. So as our public...
Excuse me. Councilor Huff?
On the, which one was it? The minor home repair program?
Mm-hmm.
What qualifies for that?
We haven't quite determined if the city, if our department will run that program in-house or if we're going to get somebody to partner with to run it for us. But basically what it will be is we'll be targeting elderly and disabled homeowners throughout the city and those that need repairs done to their home. The repairs would consist of minor stuff like a roof, HVAC, some electrical improvements. But once we get figure out who's going to be possibly running the program, we'll come up with an application process and all of that and advertise it, come up with brochures, and reach out to the elderly and disabled population to let them know about the program.
Okay. No, the one I called about, would that possibly qualify, maybe? That had the roof damage and
Yes.
she was a senior?
Yes.
Okay.
There are some things we have to look at on the front end first, like their eligibility. So we have to make sure that they're income qualified and they fall into the range, which a lot of elderly citizens and disabled citizens are on fixed incomes. So a lot of them will qualify for the program. Second, we would have to look at the condition of the house, because if it is a house that's too far gone, that it would cost more to fix, if you have to have every item in there fixed just to have new air conditioner installed, then it may be over what we can do to the house, because substantial rehab is different than the minor repair. So, but yeah, there will be different things we have to look at on the front end. But as long as they meet the minimum qualifications, then they would be approved for the program.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
On the next slide is our public service recipients. We did have another RFP process this year. We received approximately 15 applications from agencies throughout Columbus. Through that process, these are the recipients and the approximate amount of funding that they'll be allocated. So we went ahead and with the Home for Good, the COC, because that's a requirement for the city to receive all their homeless funding through the ESG and SHIP programs, we allocated $75,000 to Home for Good for that COC, Collaborative Applicant Coordinated Entry Program, which is a $25,000 increase from last year. Direct Service Corporation Meals on Wheels program, $25,000. Homeless Resource Network for a homeless program, $25,000. Mercy Med for a medical program that they have applied for, $17,500.
Excuse me, Ms. Johnson. Councilor Allen?
If we wanted to increase Meals on Wheels, how would we do that?
Well, the way that our RFP process is, the maximum for the competitive money is $25,000, and it's based on your scores. So the ones with the highest score would get the $25,000, and then it would decrease ranking in the order that what their scores were. They did score the highest on the application, so that's the reason they got the maximum allocation of $25,000. The reason we cap it at $25,000 is because our public service grant funding is capped. We're only allowed to allocate 15% of our entire CDBG portion to public services on an annual basis. So the max amount of money that we're able to allocate is right at $200,000. And so because of that, and we have so many applicants, we're trying to make it where we're able to provide more services to the public. So that's the reason we put that $25,000 cap on there.
Okay, thank you.
The boys and girls, 17.5 for their after-school program. Urban League put a proposal in for a housing counseling program, and they would get 12.5. The Urban League also put an application in for a youth STEM program, another 12.5. And the Parks and Recreation Department is looking at trying to do a Learn to Swim program, and so we allocated them $25,000 for that program. And then we set aside $4,200 for fair housing activities, which is a requirement of HUD that we do those annually. Just a little bit about that small business incubator program that I was referring to earlier. The proposal was submitted by Columbus Makes It. The funding would be used to rehabilitate this current space that they occupy at the River Valley Regional Commission, and they would convert that into a small business incubator virtual office space. And then the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund program, those would be just small loans that would be issued to businesses within our redevelopment areas. So
Quick question on the small business incubator program. Is that going to work in concert? And I kind of feel bad that I don't know for certain, but I know the chamber had a business one-stop shop, and then they had I guess a technology incubator system running through the Cunningham Center.
right.
Are those still in existence? Will they work in concert with this, or?
They're still in existence. I believe this one program would be a little bit different. I know that they're going to have actual trainings for the employees as well, to be able to assist them with writing business, business program, all that kind of stuff, to try to help them with the loans. But they'll be able to stay in this. It's an actual program where they would actually graduate from that program. They would be able to use this space, educate people who are trying to start up businesses on the process, and for a certain period of time, so that eventually they would be able to relocate out of the incubator and be able to move on to actually having a business.
Okay, because I think the original, the inspiration for the business one-stop shop was one we saw in Jacksonville, and they did provide on-site space for people to have access to folks like SCORE, senior retired executives, to help them actually get the proposals ready and the applications ready and build that business. So
All right.
I'm just curious.
I think it's probably a similar program, but they would just be utilizing that space that they're creating to create a bigger business, which would help create jobs.
I was just curious if we're actually having duplicate systems being managed by different folks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I think Columbus Makes It works with those other two agencies, so they probably have something that they'll be working
that's
together
good.
on.
Thanks.
And again, we're looking at doing the Project Care Minor Home Repair Program again. The funding would be used to perform minor repairs to income eligible elderly and disabled homeowners. As I was saying earlier, types of replacements: HVAC, installation of new roofs, plumbing, and electrical. And then we're looking at trying to do about $10,000 per home for the repairs. And then the Booker T. Washington Columbus Commons, $500,000. That would just be another payment made to the Housing Authority. The funding was used for site work improvements of that development. And then lastly, the demolition of blighted structures throughout Columbus, and that's handled through our Codes and Inspections Department. For our Home Investment Partnership Program, the administration is $102,000, and then the affordable housing development is what the rest of the funding would be utilized for. NeighborWorks Columbus submitted a proposal to develop 2 duplexes in the Bellwood neighborhood for rent to low-income households. And NeighborWorks Columbus also, they currently administer a GAP subsidy program, and they want to continue doing that program next year. So the funding would be used to assist low-income residents with becoming homeowners. As for the real estate, and that's the general funded portion, the administration's about $48,000, and the operations is about 91. It primarily, the funding that comes for the real estate is just for getting the property appraisals, attorney fees, in relations to the selling, leasing, and disposing of city properties. And there's also a building maintenance fee in there for the legacy terrace. The last one I want to speak about is the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, is the program income. We're looking at trying to utilize this funding because this funding came from 2008 during the Housing and Economic Recovery program that was through the George Bush administration. And the purpose of the program was to assist during the housing crisis in acquiring foreclosed or abandoned properties and putting them back on the market and trying to sell them. But one of the activities that you can use Neighborhood Stabilization Program funding for is land banking activities. So with the city already having an active land bank, but the problem that they have is they don't have the resources to run that land bank or acquire any properties. So we would like to use this NSP program income to allow the land bank to do their land banking activities, which would consist of acquisition of abandoned or foreclosed upon properties. They can use the funding for disposition, which would be they could hire a realtor, they can cut the grass, they can facilitate the redevelopment and market all of that. They can also use the funding to demolish the blighted properties that they acquire. They can redevelop the demolished or vacant properties, so they actually have the authority to use the funding to actually put a new house out there. And the properties can be held by the land bank for up to 10 years. So if they acquire property and they demolish it, they put it on the market, and it don't sell right away, it's okay, but they do have to show that they're actively trying to dispose of that property. So as an example of the land banking activity, so the land bank could acquire some abandoned property in the city village area with these NSP funds. They can use the NSP funds to demolish that blighted property. The land bank can donate or sell the property to Habitat as an example, and then Habitat can develop a new infill house on the parcel. It can be done with a private developer. It can be done through any nonprofit developer. So if a private developer came forward and says, I want to redevelop this property, I need assistance getting it, they could use the funding to help acquire the property, demolish the property, and then sell the property to a private developer. So it could be private or nonprofit developers actually acquiring the property at the end. So just to kind of give you an overview, right now, Muskogee County has 2,153 properties, which equate to $5.4 million in delinquencies. The enterprise zone itself has 520 properties at about $1.4 million in delinquencies. City Village has 31 properties at approximately $24,000. Winterfield has approximately 146 properties at $286,000. The Bellwood area, 71 properties at $122,000. And the Liberty District has 21 properties at approximately $133,000. So the NSP funding through the land bank can be used to redevelop some of these properties and place them back in the tax digest.
Councilor Allen?
All right, when you say these are tax delinquent properties, the city does not own these properties, is that right?
No. Those are the properties that are currently just taxed, that have tax liens on them. And those are the ones that, we got this information from the tax commissioner's office, and we separated it out by our redevelopment areas so that we could see approximately how many properties were in each one of those areas.
So when you talk about NSP funding through the land bank, these are properties they could potentially go buy and then redevelop.
Correct.
I get this may be a question for the tax commissioner, but don't we contact the owners of these properties, or?
Yes, we still have, we're working out the tax foreclosure process right now. I did go down to Macon and visit with their land bank. They're one of the best-known land banks in Georgia, to see how their programs worked. And they told me a little bit about how their tax foreclosure process works. So our first step is to work with the tax commissioner's office to determine ways that we're able to work with them as far as being able for the land bank to acquire those properties. If we can set up the process the way the Macon runs theirs would be great, because it's simplified and they're able to get their hands on the properties a lot sooner than going through the entire process. They also have something from the school board that gives them permission to forgive the school board taxes as well. You just have to have an MOA with the school board. So those are things we're working on details right now through the land bank to try to implement. But if we can get that figured out with the tax commissioner's office, then this money will assist us in being able to move forward with all of this. But the money doesn't necessarily have to be used for tax delinquent properties. So if there's a property that's just abandoned, it's paying its taxes, but it could be on our list for demo. We could still use the money to acquire that property as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tax delinquent. We just have to prove that it's either a foreclosed house or a vacant house. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. Director Johnson, really glad that you spent some time in the one area about the dealing with the land bank. I, for one, would really like to see some progress there, and I think we could do a lot of good things in our community and moving forward. And certainly the tax commissioner will have to be involved, and I hope that everybody can get to the table and sit down and work all that out. One of the questions I had, that I have is, I know in the past we have all these derelict properties out there that are just sitting out there, and they've been sitting there for years, and we do the maintenance and the upkeep and the cleaning and all that stuff, and just seems like there's never enough funds to take care of all that. Which departments now, is that money coming out of demolitions, or is it coming out of other departments' funding?
I believe Public Works does majority of the maintenance, and Parks and Rec maybe. Is that right, Pam? Or,
I remember at one time, I think your department, we used to take it out of your department, but we've moved it to other areas for funding.
That, with the demolitions liens that we currently have on the books, a majority of those liens are in the CDBG fund. We do have some in the general fund as well.
And that's coming out of public, I guess it'd be Public Works, Public Services, is that?
In inspections and codes. The demolition funds, monies were budgeted in inspections and codes.
Inspection and codes?
General fund, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. All right, well, that's, it looks like you could probably, we may be able to save a lot of money there just by, if we were able to get this program going the way you described it.
yes.
It looks like it can all work together.
It can all work together.
In that one block. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, it looks like every year, I guess, you know, this money comes from the federal government, but at the end of the day, it's still taxpayers' money. I guess at times their priorities change with the funding. It looks like we're doing more and more, I guess you call it public service type programs now than we have in the past.
The allocation, actually there was a lot more, but as our allocation decreases, with CDBG funds, because we're capped at 15%, we only have about $200,000 left that we can use for other activities.
Okay.
The way that we try to do it is competitive because there's so many social service agencies out there that really need help. So we go through the RFP process, and we have our internal staff, along with our CDAC members, review and rate all of the applications, and we score them. So this year, we're looking at a little bit of an increase because we have some program income that we're receiving this year, which would increase our cap, but it's only going to increase our cap by about $15,000. So it just gave us another $15,000 that we're able to use this year, more than other than last year.
You talked about I had a question about the incubator. You talked about is that funding directly just for projects like that, or could it be used in other areas as well?
It can be used in other areas.
Okay. I share the same concerns as the budget chair.
Mm-hmm.
I would like the executive management administration to come back at some point in time and help us understand how these programs are working in our community, that they're not overlapping, that they're not duplicating efforts or taking away from each other. You know, it's kind of a competitive thing. I'd like to see an update in the future on that.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, we can certainly come back with an update, but I do want to at least acknowledge that what you're hearing today, you're hearing about a comprehensive list of programs and opportunities that we are offering to this community. Really, a few years ago, and when we recruited Laura Johnson, I talked to you about her background and experience with HUD, and she was able to go in and look back at some funds that were believed to have expired, and we were able to resurrect those dollars. And I'm really proud that she's standing before you today, and we told you before that we would bring her back. But when you asked that question, you said it looks like we're doing a bit more of community. I don't know your exact words, but I was sitting here just making notes about CDBG and how what she's presented to you is really touching the entire community. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, quickly, I just want to say it shows that we're partnering with the Housing Authority, with the Booker T. Washington, as we've done with Baker Village and Peabody and others. But it also shows you that we are continuing with demolitions where necessary. It talks about the land bank and opportunities that she's presenting before you. We're looking at business incubator. We did these things years ago, but not in recent years. And looking at revolving loans. We did these things, but because money disappeared or was no longer there, we had to stop doing those things. But the minor home repairs, we used to do those things. And the homeless programs, we've expanded what we are doing with homeless programs. We're looking at youth programs with Boys and Girls Club. We haven't done those kinds of things in recent years. And housing counseling we've done, but we're coming back strong with that. And learn to swim, but we are touching nonprofit agencies, elderly, disabled, low income, youth, the whole gamut is what she's presenting. And so I think it's, because of her leadership and the ability to identify those dollars, because we had reduced the staff down to basically 2 people, 3 people maybe, and we were able to bring the staff back and ramp up and get to where we are today. So I'm really proud of that and what we're doing community-wide with CDBG dollars.
And that's great. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Mr. City Manager. Director Johnson, the one thing I wanted, I guess my last question, in looking at the overall scope here, and it's okay, these things that we're doing, it's all good. But I think about the crime prevention program and how we work there and what we've done to build credibility and accountability and being able to monitor these programs and make sure that they are truly beneficial and they are doing exactly what they say they're doing and meeting the mission. My question is, what kind of accountability mechanism do we have in your department that is overseeing these programs? Give us an idea of how this is working, how you periodically doing updates and monitoring what's going on with this funding.
We actually are required by HUD to monitor. So we actually have a whole monitoring plan that's been submitted and approved to HUD that we utilize to monitor all of the funding. Every penny that we get in, we have to monitor.
Now, how do you do that?
So with the subrecipients that receive the funding, we monitor them actually on a monthly basis. As they submit their draws, we actually do site inspections. We actually review every document that they submit to us. They're required to submit beneficiary data. They're required to submit invoices, backup documentation. Before we provide them one, because it's all a reimbursement, so we don't just give them the funding on the front end. they utilize, they spend the money, and then they ask us for reimbursement. So every month, we're reimbursing their request. About this time every year in May, we do actual monitor visits to the facilities, where we ask to see their files of all of their clients so that we can verify their income, verify that they're receiving the proper services that were per the grant agreement. We actually have a contract too, so every year when we get this funding approved by HUD, we go and enter into an individual contract, binding contract with each one of these agencies as well. So our monitoring is us monitoring their contracts to ensure that they're in compliance with what the city's requiring and what HUD is requiring.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I may, let me just say this. They have to, our staff, monitor, because HUD, they come down and monitor them on a regular basis. And when they monitor them, they send very lengthy monitoring letters to me. They outline all of their findings, and they don't send it to her, they send it to me. And then they've got 15 days, 30 days to clear up every finding. And so when they come down from Atlanta, I mean, they're over doing tests or pulling sample documents to make sure that they're in order. And so if they weren't doing what they are supposed to be doing, I'd know, because it would come through my office. And when they send those letters, maybe I'll have to share some of them with you to show you how detailed they are about findings in every category. And then they've got to respond back to clear up those findings. And then they may, if there are 10 findings, they clear up 7, then 3 would still be open because they're not clear, and they got to go back and clear those 3 up. And so it's a process. And so the feds are on them, and so they've got to be on the agencies that we are grant to for that reason.
And I really appreciate you going into detail and sharing that. I think it's very not only educational and enlightening for the citizens who are watching this broadcast now, but I think, as the city manager said, and being proud of what we're doing in our community, that's a key part of it. It all goes together, it all blends together, and I appreciate y'all. You said you had a limited staff. You know, it's a lot of work. Sounds like a lot of work to be doing, but we appreciate all you do, and thank you for a good presentation.
Thanks, sir. Councilor Baker?
Cool. Thank you. And thank you for the work you've done. The Brett has come a long way since you've been there. We're grateful. And the community is too, really is. Are these programs that HUD has said you will offer, or are these just possibilities?
They're possibilities. HUD gives us an option every year. The only thing that HUD requires is that what we do, it meets the national objectives, and that it also is something that is approved as a HUD program. Okay. So they have a list of everything that we can use the funding for, all the regulations pertaining to that funding, and so they just say, here's your money, and you tell us what you're going to do. But we do that through citizen participation. So like when we created our consolidated plan, which just was adopted last year by HUD, we have public meetings with citizens, we have public meetings with individual agencies, and we get all of their input prior to us deciding what we're going to use this funding for. So when we have that 5-year plan that we do every 5 years, this annual plan is done every year during the budget cycle, and that's where we actually take items that were addressed in that 5-year plan, we pull them out, and we implement them that year. So technically, what our 5-year plan says, every year we're supposed to be doing something out of that plan. So that's where the actual programs come from.
Okay. It looks great. The only one I do have some concerns over, I'm not a fan of the business loan programs. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're a bank. I don't think we ought to be acting like one. It's reviewing loan proposals and following through with collection cycles and what happens if there's a default and workout schedules and is the money being spent like it was and the loan app and all that. I just, unless the mayor pro tem wants to personally look over that program, she's an ex-banker. I trust her to do it. Whatever I say, okay. But that's my only concern. I'm not a fan of the loan programs. I just don't think we ought to be in the banking business. But everything else looks really, really good.
Well, I will let you know that this is a trial period.
Yeah.
If for some reason it doesn't work out,
Oh, I
the money
understand,
would
sure.
just go back into the pot, and then we would just come back and ask approval to
Well,
allocate it
and-
to something else.
As long as those buried provisions aren't in there, that if something gets used improperly, it's got to be repaid out of local funds. That's what's always worried us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So as long as there's protection from that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Thomas?
Two questions. Ms. Johnson, these delinquent properties that you had listed, the ones that you have listed for the various sections of the community, these are properties that have delinquent taxes but are not necessarily blighted properties, right?
Correct.
And so these are the properties that we might have seen being sold on the courthouse steps?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Correct.
And there are about 800 of those that you've listed in these various neighborhoods, so that leaves another 1,300 in other places. So are all of those 2,100 properties subject to this, or is it just those that are in the areas that you listed?
We would actually we're trying to focus on our redevelopment areas, but if something, because the land bank, really, you want to utilize it to acquire properties that you have some sort that you could possibly have a future use for. Because, you really don't want to acquire it and then just sit there for 10 years if possible. So we would strategically, the land bank, and we'll be working closely with the land bank, would strategically look at all these properties that do have tax liens on them, determine which ones that are in neighborhoods that we're looking at revitalizing, or even ones outside. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as we feel that there's a need, that it can be, that we can buy it and we can turn around and something can be done with it. So we're going to have to strategically look at everything just to see which ones we might be able to acquire and actually be able to do something with it.
So are you saying we could either, we could purchase them and perhaps because we know that we could sell them on the open market,
You
or
can sell
because
them.
we have need for property in that particular, we the
Correct.
city have need for property in that particular
Correct.
area? Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to ask you, I've been listening, as I guess most people have, to the budget talks on the federal level, and some of the conversation about particularly CDBG money that may be not forthcoming from the federal government. Are there other pots of money like that that you administer that you may be a little concerned about whether or not the federal government's going to continue to send that? And I know that you've talked about some CDBG money. If that particular portion of the budget, the federal budget, goes through, is that impact going to be in FY18 or 19?
It would be in FY19.
19.
Yeah,
Okay, so
we've gotten approved.
You think we're okay for 18?
We're okay this year. I got notification yesterday, we're okay for 18.
Okay.
So it would be another year for them to decide whether or not they're going to approve the fiscal year 19 funding.
And are there other pots of money that we get from the federal government that you might have some concerns about?
The CDBG and the home funding that I had in the presentation, both of those are HUD funding, and they're both slated for elimination in fiscal year 2019. So it was both of the programs that I discussed earlier.
Okay, so we are looking then at those programs that might typically in other years carry over into the next fiscal year, but probably will not this go round. Is that right?
Unless we have program income or carryover funds, they're not going to take away our funding that's already been allocated to us, but any future allocations we could look at possibly being eliminated in CDBG and in home.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
And-
Ms. Barnes?
Yes, Lord, you have done a great job. I can remember when we had way more people in that department. And I remember the cuts that we had to make in the money. So you've really done a lot. I'm really glad to see this Project Care and how you directed funding to that. Because there are a lot of senior citizens who just can't afford to have repairs and have
Right.
older homes. But minor repairs will be able to keep them in their homes.
Correct.
And so you have done a great job, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Davis?
Mr. City Manager, since we're on the subject, I got a request for you. Would you be gracious enough, I know Councilor Huff and I talked about this a long time ago, and you were really good about making something happen. There was a property, when talking about demolitions, there was a property on 6th and 7th, I believe, and there was some asbestos matters with it, but you were real diligent in making sure that that property was taken care of. There's another property next to it off the road. It's been there for a long time. Councilor Huff and I just brought it to my attention. It's been there for a long time, but since we're approving funding here, would you be kind enough to take a good look at that property and see maybe where it could fall on that list? Especially with all the great things going on down in the Liberty District. If you go by there and take a look at it, you might see what I'm talking about.
I will.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to sort of clarify my response to Councilor Davis earlier regarding the demolition monies. When I stated that we have properties in the CDBG fund as well as the general fund, if we have used CDBG monies to demo the property, that's why it's in the CDBG fund. So that would come from CDBG funding, and then the general fund properties that we have demoed, that would come from inspections and codes. And then for the maintenance and upkeep of both the CDBG property and the general fund property, that is contracted out of Public Works. So when we have to go and mow, that's done, that's paid for out of Public Works.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Johnson, thank you. And by the way, I would urge all of you, I know I went and attended the awards, and then I went this year to the kickoff of Cities Week, and it really is an eye-opener to see just how many partners we touched through that office in this community, and how many people, they actually had some folks stand up and give sort of a testimonial on how they have benefited from some of the programs. It is, I mean, you know, typically I don't think of government as being in more social type programs, but because of the way this office manages funds that are available for that specific purpose, we really, you've done a great job. We appreciate you and your staff.
All right. Appreciate it.
Angelica?
So next on the agenda, we have Parks and Recreation, and our Parks and Recreation Director, Holly Browder, is here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So last year, we brought forth an increase in our after-school programming, and unfortunately, it was not recommended or it did not go through. So this year, we've come back again because we still have a deficit in what we're actually bringing in each year in our after-school program. And so what we've included in our packet to you in regards to after-school program is an increase of $6. And the first slide shows you the fees for weekly for parents are in the after-school program, and what those would be. And as we've listed and we discussed before, ours is income-based. We don't have a flat set rate like most agencies. Ours is more income-based to try to help parents, honestly, to afford a program for their children that are much needed. So the first slide represents what those after-school program weekly rates are. And you can see it's based on annual income, which is on the left-hand side. And then it tells you what our current rates are based on first, second, and any additional children they may have. And then the next will show you, it basically goes all the way across. And then next to that, you will also see the proposed amount that parents would be asked to pay. And that is the $6 increase that we're asking for on each of those. And then the next few slides are each separate and different. meaning that this is the before-school program weekly rates, meaning if you had a child and you just wanted them to go to our program in the mornings, that's the only time you needed us. These are the rates that they would pay just for the morning program.
Excuse me, Holly,
Sure.
I'm sorry, before we
That's
get
okay.
too far down the road. Counselor Thomas?
Are these rates included in the mayor's proposal?
Yes,
or-
ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
you're not asking for this in addition to
No,
what was
no,
in the
ma'am.
proposal?
This is what is in the mayor's proposal. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
As I said, this next slide is just for before school, for parents who only need that program in the mornings. The next slide is if you have a parent who needs before and after school, meaning that they need us to help in the mornings, and then their child needs somewhere to go after school. These are the same rates. And as I said before, each slide is the same in the fact that it represents their annual income, what they may currently pay, what we've proposed, and it's based on how many children they would have in our program, whether it's 1, 2, or even additional than that. It breaks it down on what parents would be asked to pay. And then there again, the only thing that's really is additional is the $6, and we've shown that on each slide to represent those costs.
Holly, I know this, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I
that's
know
okay.
this isn't your bailiwick, but have y'all done any kind of cost studies on what commercial daycare costs or any of that?
We have, and I will tell you, as a parent, our rates are very, very low.
No, and I thought they probably were, but it's been a long time
They,
since I've paid for it.
they are, and I'll skip, we did the
sorry.
comparison, that's okay, we did the comparison between us and other agencies locally. We didn't do daycares per se, but we did similar agencies such as ourselves. So any of the schools, there are 6 schools locally in Muskogee County that have after-school programs very similar to ours. Also, the YMCA, that's, as you know, is a very similar agency, and the Child Care Network, which would be a daycare, St. Luke, which is a school here, Growing Room, which is a daycare, and Angel Academy, which is the same. And so you can see, if you look at their rates, where we are in alignment with what they currently
Okay.
charge.
All
And
right.
that gives you the weekly rates. It also gives you the drop-in rate. A drop-in rate means that don't need daycare or childcare all the time. Every once in a while, I've got something as a parent and I need to drop my child off, so that's your drop-in rate. So that's what they would pay for one day. And as I said before, we're the only agency that's income-based. Everyone else has that set fee, so it's a flat rate that the parents always pay regardless, whereas we require a little bit of documentation, but ours is based on a parent's income for their household.
Well, and the only reason I ask is and I voted against this last time, but this is a year's worth of notice in my mind that we can't continue at the rates that we're currently charging. So I'm inclined to support this year. I just want reassurance that we are still doing what we can to cover a sector of the community that can't otherwise find childcare.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And if you look at our weekly rate right here in comparison to other agencies, our lowest rate would be $27, and you can see that's far below the next closest to us, which is $45. And so that would be your lowest income bracket for a one child in need of after-school care or before-school care. And so that $27 in line, you can see the most expensive is $115, and so we do offset that pretty far. So yes, sir. Okay. The next thing that we'd like to discuss, it disappeared, is a proposal in the increase of hours at the Columbus Aquatic Center. We are not asking for any additional funding. We are going to maintain, I apologize because it's not on the screen. We're going to maintain and use the same budget we are currently funded at. But the proposal that we have put forth is we'd like to increase the hours, and I know that our aquatic council, our aquatic commission previously came forth and they asked that question, whether that was a possibility, and the answer was that if we could function within the current budget, that we could try to start to gain or try to acquire some additional hours. And so the staff has worked very closely with the commission, and I do apologize, since our time changed a little bit today, they were not able to join us, but several of our commission members were going to join us at council today, because this is sort of the agreement that we have come to in our meetings that we've had, is that we'd really like to be able to offer something additional. We're trying to go back to those morning times when we might perhaps be able to get some of our adult swimmers back in. Those folks who work, honestly, that have a hard time being able to come during the day. And then in our later times in the evenings, we are really busy with our younger swimmers and our younger children. And so it's very hard to get a lot of those groups in. And what you will see here is the current schedule is 8 to 7, Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, it's 10 to 3, with our current operating hours is 60. And what we're asking for going forward is that we would change that just slightly. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, we would open 2 hours earlier in the day. That would help us pick up some of those older athletes that would like to come in before they get off to work for the day. And it would also give us an hour longer in the evenings. And that's twofold, because we're trying to work with all of our user groups, meaning that we're trying to work with the public and all ages of that. We're also trying to work with the schools, and we're also trying to work with the 2 local swim groups that we currently have. And so this would also help us by adding that extra hour, would also help us to allow them. Twofold, it would also allow us an additional hour in our warming pool to be able to offer additional programming. And as many of you know, we've been very, not had a director, and we've not been able to do the programming that we wanted to do until just recently. And so we're hoping by adding these additional hours, not only in the morning, but in the evenings, will allow us to pick up people that haven't traditionally been able to come as of this past year. And so that's why we've asked for such hours. And then we would keep them, we would only keep the same on Wednesdays and Fridays, because we feel like those days would not benefit the user groups as much. And so we're just trying to pick the higher usage dates for the public.
And the only 2 things I would mention about that, number one, I think it's great that you can expand the hours. This council, to my knowledge, never, ever budgeted a number of hours. It always budgeted a dollar amount, and the fact that you're able to work that budget into expanded hours is awesome. And I hate to sound sensitive about that, but I know I get calls from people who says, why did you only budget for 60 hours? We didn't. We budgeted an amount. And I want to make one more point that it has raised my hopes, and I probably has the rest of council's too. When they made their report, one of the reports they got from somebody at USA Swimming or something indicated that for a community our size and our diversity and a facility like ours, it should be able to attain self-sustaining levels of revenue. And I got to tell you, that was very encouraging, because when we first started talking about a natatorium, that's what we were told, is that eventually through proper management and through working it and advertising and marketing, it would be able to be self-sustaining. So I think that provided a glimmer of hope, so to speak. So y'all doing a good job with it. I know you're doing all you can. Ms. Goodwin, I'm trying to click your light there, and it's just not working.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say that it's probably worth noting that the Aquatic Center Commission fully supports the change of these hours as well. They vetted this quite a bit, and they are in full support of that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm sorry.
No, that's all is in regards to the Columbus Aquatic Center. Like Ms. Goodwin said, our commission does support it, and I apologize that they're unable to be here, but the time change sort of threw them. But they do support it because we have been very successful in working together to try to move us forward in a way that we can benefit the whole community, trying to serve all of the user groups, and we are starting to see the successes of that. And we're very excited as we move forward to being able to reach a greater potential with our facility and gain traction. As we as a department have said pretty much the whole time, we've just got to get the right people in the right places and then begin to start to get some momentum. And so I'm happy to say that we look like we're going in the positive direction, and we'll really start to build some.
But these hours are currently budgeted.
Yes, because we are not asking for anything
That's what I
additional,
thought.
and so,
Okay.
yes, sir, this would include in what we currently have.
I was asked that, I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. No, sir, that is correct.
Hang on just a second, we've got Counselor Huff.
Does this put us in line now with some of the ones we looked at previously that we couldn't figure out how they had the number of hours for the dollar amount?
Not necessarily. A lot of them still have budgets greater than ours. And I think for us, we're trying to be tentative about how we select those hours and make sure that we can fully fund everything that we want. And so I know as a department working with the commission that what we've looked at is let's take baby steps, if you will. Let's make sure that we can cover what we've asked for. And I say that because of what I said momentarily about the fact that we haven't had a director. We haven't had programs like we'd like to, and that's going to cost us. Programs, buying supplies and things of that nature are going to come at a cost. Now, they will also come hopefully at a positive revenue, a greater positive revenue. And so until we're able to get all of those components as they are now, just gotten in place within the past 60 days, we will start to build some momentum and see ourselves propel forward. Perhaps I can come next year and say, we think we can do additional hours. I don't know, and we are not willing to say that until we know for sure.
Well,
We're very cautious.
Well, the compliment at this point is you're doing well with what I see. There are some that had a similar budget amount, and it seems like the hours are moving. That's why I was asking the question. Seems like you're moving that direction. But the compliment is we were trying to figure out how they were doing it, so it seems like you figured it out some kind of way. With
We hope so. We're getting there.
hours. Okay.
We hope so,
All right,
yes, sir.
Counselor Davis.
Director Browder, we really appreciate all the hard work and efforts, and it sounds like we're moving in the right direction and in a positive direction. That's good news. And I'm going to ask you maybe a broad question. If you really want to put a shot of adrenaline in the program and just ramp it up and get the marketing going, really getting the hours where it needs to go, and creating good things and getting all the members back, the ones that we lost. In doing that, what do you think it would take on a funding side to make that happen? And I know the board, or the advisory board commission is working really hard, and certainly we appreciate all those efforts, but what would it take?
It would really depend on how many hours we're wanting to operate, and that goes back to what the department has always said, and keeping in line with the numbers that we predicted previously. So it's based on what the community is asking for and how many hours. Just as the chairman here mentioned a moment ago, it's not based on a set number of hours per set dollar, obviously. But for us, it would be how many hours are we asked to operate the facility, and that would equivalent to a dollar figure, to be honest with you.
Well, would you do us a favor at some point as y'all continue to move forward and you work with the commission? Could you kind of explore that in general and maybe give us a snapshot of where into the future we can go to continue to take more positive steps and to support your efforts, Parks and Rec's efforts? And
I certainly think so, and I certainly see it as it's something that in a year's time we'll certainly be able to come back and give you a much better answer at that. And it's a situation where we need all the pieces of the puzzle, if you will, in place, meaning we need all the staff to be in place because there's a cost associated with that. We need to be able to buy all the program supplies. There's a cost with that. But that'll also allow us the opportunity to offer those additional programs, which will bring in, hopefully, additional memberships, not just people attending these classes, but that they come to the pool, they see the positives, and they see the benefits of it, and they become members. And that's what we're finding, is that as we offer programs and classes, that those people are returning. And that's what we want. But it sort of starts as just like anyone, when you go and try something for the first time, you want to make sure it's what you want and that you like it, and then you come back. And so that's what we're seeing.
well, again, I thank you, and I know Mr. Budget Chair and the rest of my council members, I think this year we're getting off to a good conversation dealing with our aquatic center. So we appreciate all the efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead, Holly.
Next, we have not been approved, but we always like to make mention so that it is known what we are in need of in our department. It's been a number of years since we've been able to get any capital request, and as any department, we're a general fund budget, so we don't have the ability to receive funds from any other funds except for general funds. And so I'll go through very quickly, but just so it is fair to mention the items that we are needed. And I will say there are a lot of things not listed on here. These are more bare necessity, really need to have type things, moreover than luxuries, if you will, or things that we just like to have. These are bare bones. These are my guys and our guys getting out there day to day and getting the job done kind of tools. And so if you will, I'll just go through very quickly. But the first area is our Division of Parks and Services. So this is our area that maintains all of our ball fields, any of our parks. We're in need of a vehicle. You can see the mowers, 25 mowers, 4 baggers, paint machines to paint the lines on the fields, ball conditioners, we need 6 of those. We need golf carts to carry materials around these larger parks that we work in. 2 additional gangrel mowers so that when we cut the grass, such as at Woodruff and places like that, and at South Commons, it's done in a correct way so it doesn't damage the grass. And an aerator as well to help us condition the fields. Additional funding or capital requests for park services includes new trailers. All of our equipment is in need of repair and replacement, and so we're asking for 20 trailers, a tiller, a ball machine, vertical cutter, side cutters, tractors, chemical sprayers, and bush hog mowers. And so the total of capital requested for park services this year was 1.5. Essentially for their division, but just wanted
Councilor
to
Huff.
mention.
And all is inclusive already? in the
Yes,
budget?
sir. Everything that is in here was part of our original budget request, so yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thanks.
It's not
But-
budgeted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is.
No, it is not included. None of our requests are included at this time. No, sir.
Oh, okay.
None. I apologize. I misunderstood your question. My apologies. But
Thank you.
no, at this time, we did not receive any capital funding.
And
for Parks
I'm
Recreation.
not trying to sit here and prioritize for you. I apologize if that's what it sounds like, but it sounds to me like some of the most critical are mowers. How, and I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you need them and you don't want to make me think you don't need them that bad, but how critical is it getting with the mowers and the system and the machinery that we have to be able to handle all that you guys have on your plate?
Well, I'll give you a really good example.
Okay.
So we have our crews that go out and cut the larger parks, and those are our correction crews, our inmate crews. We may get 4 or 5 guys on a crew, and this has been mentioned before, but we may get 4 or 5 guys on one of those correction crews. We may only have 1 lawnmower for that entire crew. And so that means that we have folks that can't go out, we put them on weed eaters. Because that's the only thing we can put them on. And so they're cutting these larger parks with weed eaters and 1 mower. And what happens if that mower goes out? Well, they have to share with another crew. And so that's the only way we can get it done, because we just don't have the equipment anymore. And we're a department that if right away gets something new, they hand it down to us. And we're grateful, don't get me wrong, we're very grateful to have anything, because unfortunately, such as last year, we purchased 3 mowers last year out of our budgeted funds. Well, 4 or 5 more go down. So in essence, we might purchase 3, but we need 2 and 3 more.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Certainly.
One thing I've asked finance staff to do, and perhaps what we should have been doing in previous fiscal years, but with reserve fund balance situations, we've not. In Parks and Rec, excluding, not considering salary savings, they've come in considerably under budget in their operating portions of the budget. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe. If they had done, like, let's say public safety or some others, not talking about salary savings, if they had come and said, city manager, council, we're going to come in $700,000 under in our operating budget, not considering salary savings. We'd like to purchase 15 mowers. I think you probably would have said yes. I'm speculating. But there could be an opportunity as we close out this fiscal year, not considering salary savings, that they will be under a budget in other operating categories. That they could come and say, would you allow us to purchase X number of mowers? So that's something that hasn't been done in recent years with them for reasons, and perhaps could be something that's considered this year. and maybe in some future years if we're
And I,
okay.
you know, I think we're getting to a point in our budget where nothing's off the table, but I got to tell you that type of philosophy scares me, because you've got some smaller departments that are heavily budgeted towards personnel. Well, there's just not that much of an opportunity for them to realize any kind of savings outside salary. And it sort of skews in my mind, this is just one person's opinion, but it sort of skews the playing field a little bit. Having said that, I recognize that our larger departments that touch the greatest majority of our citizens certainly includes Parks and Rec, and it does so in a way that can lead to health and welfare because of unkempt right away and letting that stuff get out of control. So I'm not saying don't look at that. I'm just saying that it hasn't been a mechanism that I think we've used in the past, certainly not with any confidence.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to point that out in the event you were about to engage a discussion about finding
Gotcha.
money in the current proposed budget for mowers and for other things, it was to say, maybe you should just wait and let us take a look
Okay.
as we close out this fiscal year, and whatever you have in mind, we might be able to do it within this year's operating budget and still not touch salary savings.
But and what was on my mind was just gaining clarity so that I understood, and your example was a great way of painting a picture for us regarding what we're dealing with. Councilor Davis?
Director Browder, you think you could put a priority list together of what you need off of the capital request here, and with the intent that I'm willing to add something, and I'll tell you why I am, because there's just, this touches so many people and so many lives and is utilized day in, day out, constantly, and even we've had some dealings with lawsuits dealing with some of the equipment matters and things like that, and then even you look at, like you talked about, you got the number 2 facility, sports tourism facility. It might be number 1, but I can tell you what, there's a lot of competition in the state right now trying to take our soccer tournaments and sports tournaments away from us. And it's imperative that we maintain and upkeep our facilities on a constant basis, or we're going to lose this revenue, and it's a lot of revenue. Like I said, it's the number 2 producing revenue coming in, sports-related tourism coming in, supporting this community. That's a lot of revenue, and I don't, you hear all the Convention Visitors Bureau has been marketing a lot lately about all this revenue, that the tourism revenue that comes into our community, and it's big. And we support a lot of our venues, most like a lot of other municipalities and cities. They don't do that. We support a lot of our municipality venues here, so we do need it. So I'm willing to add 1/3 of that. I don't know if it'll get passed, but I'm willing to add 1/3 of that, but I need you to prioritize what that would take as far as line items. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
do that for me?
Yes, sir. And what we'll do is we'll go back, because each of the divisions is represented in what you have in front of you, and what we'll do is go back as a department and prioritize the entire list, because that's what we do from the beginning. We have each division prioritized. So when you look at park services, we need a vehicle, because we have staff who we could put out doing other things, and we have to share vehicles, because they don't have a vehicle to drive anymore because their vehicle is no longer viable. But yes, sir, we can certainly do that, and we can do it as a department. And yes, sir, you make a very good point, because many of our facilities are in need of upgrades, not just equipment-wise, but you bring up South Commons and the sports, the revenue that's generated from the folks, if you will, heads and beds, and the folks who come for our tournaments, just whether it's South Commons or Woodruff Park or anywhere else at the soccer complex. We are starting to lag behind.
And I'll tell my colleagues, just in case some of them have not been privy to the emails over the last 2 or 3 years, but you are right about the grass cutting at some of the facilities and all, and you might not think that means a lot, but when these people come in to play these high caliber tournaments and they're not playing on good field conditions, it's adios. We'll see if we don't like your facility, we're going to a better one.
Yes, sir.
So we do need to to stay up on these things. And that's been one of the, I hear those complaints I think you've handled them well. I'm not getting involved in it, but I see what's coming through, and I hear that. But we've been dealing with that for a while, and I see you got that, one of those requests on the list. So, Mr. Budget Chair, I'm adding a third of that, which would be $500,000 on the ad list, with a prioritized list from the director.
And so,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, back to my point, I was just going to ask again, so would you rather add it, or would you rather take a look at the existing budget as long as it's not salary savings? Either way, it's just, those are
Well,
options.
let's go ahead and put it on the ad list, just because it was a request of one of the counselors, and we can look at that as an offsetting funding mechanism, and this group will have an opportunity to try to make that decision at the time. But I think, speaking for myself, I'd like to see an email with the list on what the items are going to actually be, instead of just an arbitrary, and I know it's not arbitrary, but just instead of just an amount.
No, sir, and the list would come from, like I said, from these requests.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
I'll go through the rest pretty quickly. I
Okay.
won't do the itemized, as you can see. The next division that you have before you is recreation services. Recreation services is essentially our recreation facilities. In the way we have 8 recreation centers, 4 senior centers, a therapeutic population, and our arts. And so in the recreation services in this category as it relates, it just represents the 8 recreation centers. And so in our recreation centers, you can see it's pretty much technology as well as the basics such as chairs, tables, et cetera. And the computers would be to set up or to replace existing computer labs for children to come in and do homework or tutorials, things of that nature. We partner with a lot of agencies, and many times they come before you, so you may be aware of some of them. But our equipment is aged and just needs to be replaced. So that's as it relates to recreation services. And this is the continuation, some exercise equipment that's outdated, can't be repaired any longer, needs to be replaced. And then athletics, our biggest thing, as I mentioned earlier, we need vehicles, because our vehicles have either died and they're not replaced. And so we have to share vehicles within our department. So one division borrows from another, and you got to coordinate and make sure that you don't go anywhere that day because this person needs to borrow the vehicle. But essentially, that's what we do.
Excuse
and
me,
we make
Holly.
it work.
Counselor Garrett?
I just had a question about are some of these costs, are they associated with a vendor we've got to use? Because, I mean, I just bought a treadmill, for example, and the commercial highest top-of-the-line one's like $2,500 worth of warranty and all kinds of stuff. And same thing with the recumbent bikes, they're about $1,300.
Sure. These are more commercial rated, and they are, for the most part, under contract with vendors that we use. If they're not, then we have to put it out on bid to purchase it because of the cost. But yes, but when we purchase them, we're purchasing something that is the highest rated for weight and for usage and for lifetime of the actual unit, because what we found, you can't go to Sears, you can't go to the local places or somewhere like that and purchase equipment. It doesn't last for us, because you're talking about even the nicer residential ones are not made to withstand, the 300-pound, 6'5" guy who comes in there and gets his workout on every day, and that's not the only time it's used. So yes, sir, these are.
The Nordic Track one I was talking about is their top-of-the-line commercial grade, but it'd be coming in about half this price, so.
We buy more commercial, industrial than a Nordic Track. We
Okay.
buy Pro Maxima, and we buy a couple other brands
Okay.
that are a little heavier. So yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
The next area was cultural arts. I'm not sure why it's not showing up, but in our cultural arts division, essentially we were asking for some similar things, computers, laptops, and those are for classes. As you know now, many things are digital, and so we want to be able to do the same type things and offer art in a way that's digital. A storage shed, because our facility is very aged and we need additional storage because we've been there a while. Also, we need additional wheels and kilns to do the firings that we do, and so these are the list of things that cultural arts is in need of. And I will state that our kilns that we use and the vents We do have them repaired, but we've reached a point where, for the most part, they just can't be repaired any longer. And there's no one locally. We do have to contract and get someone out of the Atlanta area to come here and work on them for us. Moving forward, the next would be our senior services, senior citizen services. We have 4 senior centers here in Columbus, and these represent the needs of those senior citizen centers. And essentially, it's kilns and exercise equipment. As many of you know, and we've talked about before, our population obviously is more active. Even in their older years, many of them are still very, very active. And we, as a department, want to make sure that we're in tune to the needs of the community. And the community needs to stay active. And so we're asking for those type things that they ask us for. And so these are the things that we were looking for in our senior citizens division. We also have listed our needs for Memorial Stadium. This would be to upgrade the lights. Essentially, right now, the lights that we have at Memorial Stadium, we cannot play night games. And the reason we cannot play night games is what's called candle width. The candle width is how much light is provided on the field per light pole. And currently, the light poles that we have do not provide the candle width to do so. And we are at the point, even with our high school games, that we are very limited in the candle width that's being produced. And so that's why we're asking for the upgrade in lights. Also, upgrades for the video board, and these include a TriCaster system, which would integrate with what we currently have, as well as the installation of the cameras that would be needed to coordinate to the board. And so there is the request that we have for Memorial Stadium. At our Lake Oliver Marina, we're asking for basics, and some may see these as why are they included, but it's because of the total number that we need. This is a facility that gets rented a lot and used by the community a lot, and so we ask for things as Councilor Walker asked a moment ago, Garrett asked a moment ago, these are things that are commercial in need. They're not your basic residential type items, so they're a little more costly. And then lastly.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Councilor Thomas?
Ms. Browder, did I hear you say we are not playing, excuse me, high school football games at night at Memorial Stadium?
We do play, but currently we need additional candle width. We need additional lights. We do play, but we can't do any more than what we have now because the candle width is not bright enough. Meaning that we can't play any college games, we can't bring any other groups there of that level other than the high school, and we just barely meet the minimum for the current high school standards. The standards change, and our lights are older and they're not LED, so the candle width is not exactly as much as it really needs to be or that we would like for it to be, but it's still applicable to what we can do. It just needs to be greater than what it currently is.
Thank you.
No problem. Also, as Ms. Goodwin mentioned, we can't do televised games because there's not enough candle width. So even if, we'll go back to your question as far as high school games go, even if they really want to do a lot of televising of our games, it's very hard because the candle width is not there for the lighting.
Yes, one of the issues with playing the college football games at night, and what they've shared with me is it's referred to as foot candles, and I think they require a minimum of 50 foot candles, and we don't have that. And technically, I believe Georgia High School Association actually require 50 foot candles.
I'm not sure on the high school.
And
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, well, you might want to check that. I think they've got it at Gannett Stadium, but we don't have it at Memorial Stadium, A.J. McClung Memorial Stadium.
Have we done a cost analysis on what would happen if some of those games were relocated somewhere else? In terms of
we
lost
haven't.
revenue?
We have not in regards to high school because right now we try to play as many as possible. We work with the school district hand in hand to help the schools to be able to play their games. We do know that we could do so in a different way if we were able to play differently. But
So have we lost revenue or lost opportunities from the lower level collegiate level or independent league teams? Because I'm just trying to see if there's a direct cost-benefit relationship with if this were considered, what type of revenue would we have an opportunity to generate?
I can only say that based on what we currently have compared to, say, for instance, Connect Stadium, organizations don't select to come to us because of that. They would moreover perhaps go to Connect. So it's hard for me to estimate or tell you what we have or have not lost because there's another opportunity for them locally.
Gotcha. Counselor Thomas?
I do know, too, that there is a concern at the school district level on scheduling because they don't necessarily want to play their football games on Thursday night, but they are already booked at Connect on Friday night, and they don't want to go out of town all the time. So it's one of those, what do we do kind of things.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see who's next. Mayor Pro Tem.
Wasn't there an article in the newspaper about lighting?
I do not recall. I apologize. I do not recall.
I read it someplace. Because I know I didn't know. And I think it had something to do with the school system in the stadium, not being able to use it at night.
Was it playoff games? Could have been playoff games when it's a premium to try to get it at a specific time.
Okay. Counselor Davis.
In general, in this conversation, I know you're talking about Memorial Stadium, and, we do a lot of, I guess we do a lot of shared kind of opportunities with the school district and working with them various, they utilize, let's just say they utilize a lot of our facilities and all, but that's not what that's just a small part of the problem that I see in the future, which really, really concerns me, and I would hope that we start, I know, Mr. City Manager, you said that that the administration is putting and compiling a list of just the condition and of all the facilities, and we talked about, I think I brought we were having this various conversation about Memorial and some of the concerns there, but it's not just there, it's Golden Park, it's other places, all across the city. Councilor Allen, it's the ballparks, it's our super centers, it's our gyms, it's everything, and there's other facilities and needs as well. I mean, we're going to hear from more departments about, some of the concerns, and I know with this budget, I feel confident that the mayor's tried to do everything she can in working our capital needs out as we go into the future, but you've always heard me say that's one of the things I'm really, really concerned about as a council representative is our need to replace our facilities, our brick and mortar that's out there. Let's just face it, it's becoming more and more outdated, and as time goes by, it's just getting worse, but we're working with what we have. Let that be noted. But I think having the conversations at some point in time of strategy is the right thing to do, maybe having that conversation with our friends at the school district, and maybe in the future working together in replacing a lot of our facilities and things, splots related, as we call it, brick and mortar. And maybe there's a possibility, certainly it would be put in the hands of the citizens, but maybe being able to share revenue coming in that we can all meet our needs if it's expressed conditionally what we're trying to do and tied to a time frame and an allocation of money, and then it's terminated at that point. That might be something that we really, really need to explore because I don't think I'm the only one that shares those concerns, but it's every year that goes by, it's getting worse, and it's going to cost more money. I mean, that's just the nature of what's happening. So anyway, I thought it'd be a good point, good time, Mr. Budget Chair, to interject into this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Counselor Allen.
Holly, how much were you looking for the marina?
Let's see, 16,000.
Okay,
Looks like I have a mistake in my
Yeah, there-
total list.
maybe a typo there.
Yes, I believe so. Thank you. But yes, 16,000, and like I said before, that's primarily, it's just tables and chairs because we do buy commercial. But I can tell you the chairs that we currently have are the chairs when once the facility was renovated and reopened as it is now. Those are the original chairs that were put in that facility. And we have recovered them. We've done things that, trying to be proactive on our side without having to actually purchase new equipment. We try to stretch it as far as we can and do the very best we can with utilizing what we have, and so we have recovered those, reupholstered those, if you will. So, yes, sir.
Well, you anticipated my next question. I was wondering if the chairs came with the refurbish of the arena, so.
They have been, yes, sir. We have, staff has done that, and we take every effort in our department, whether it's a chair or a lawnmower, you name it. We try our very best to get every dollar out of it, so we don't have to come before and ask for funding. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Browder, no more questions? Thank you.
Okay.
You guys have really done an amazing job, and don't think we don't recognize that with all the area you cover, with
Thank you.
as few resources as you have, you guys really do an amazing job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I will mention, the good news is we're on schedule. The bad news is we started an hour early. But so I just say that to be mindful as we move forward.
And so next, we have on the agenda our Human Resources Department and Risk Management.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
We wanted to talk to you this afternoon about our Risk Management Division in Human Resources. Back in 2012, you all made what I believe was a very wise decision to bring back the risk management function so that it can benefit the entire city. And with doing so, that particular section or division now has a risk manager and has one administrative coordinator person in that position, and they've done some remarkable things that we've talked about here over the last 4 years. They've done some remarkable things in terms of our workers' comp area and our claims liability area and our safety area, and they're continuing to look for safety area, things that they can do throughout the city, and they have other opportunities that they are continually looking at and want to be able to bring those to the city. So I wanted the risk manager to come and just talk a little bit, give an overview of what we've been doing and where we are, and talk about what we believe is our next opportunity for risk management, to look at adding to that particular division so that we can continue the return on investment that we've brought to the city for these past 4 years. And I think, like I said, we've talked about it and you've heard some of the good things that have been done, and we want to take this opportunity to give another overview of what we're doing and then ask for your consideration of the next step forward in risk management. So our risk manager, Anne Marie Amiel, is going to come and make a brief presentation.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
I'm glad to have this opportunity to come and talk to you. Okay, so the responsibilities that risk management has taken on since I came almost 5 years ago. Wow. We've been doing workers' comp, third-party liability claims, safety program planning, and loss control. What we are looking at now is transferring some of the insurance liability work that currently resides in finance. In the past couple of years, I've been working with finance on some of the bigger claims that have involved our facilities, because my background includes working as an adjuster, and therefore I know a little bit about that. Finance has had, obviously, as we all know, some shortfalls in staffing, so I've been helping them with that. What we have discussed is transferring the insurance especially the facilities liability work, to risk management. And that's one of the reasons why I'm before you today. I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of what risk management has been able to accomplish. And in workers' comp, we are now running over $2 million a year less in our claims costs than we were when I came. Return to work savings just for last year are approximately $133,000. That involves programs whereby we bring injured workers back with restrictions. I have got wonderful department heads around the city who have worked with me to enable us to place injured workers who have restrictions in other departments than their own to pick up some of the functions for which those departments have no personnel. So they are able to perform some of those tasks, and that helps the department, it helps the worker because they're not sitting at home, they're getting better psychologically and physically. Last year, in fact, about a month or so back, we actually got a refund in our excess coverage premium for the last policy year. That's been a lot of work to produce the correct figures for the excess coverage provider. They do a premium audit every year at the end of the policy period, and they sent us a check for, I think it was $50,935, so I rounded it up. It's $51,000. State assessment for board operations. The State Board of Workers' Comp assesses every employer in the state a certain amount to cover their operations each year. And because of our improved figures, last year they reduced that by $5,000 so that it was approximately $32,000 for the year. And that's a significant reduction when you look at that percentage figure. And in summary on that, return on investment, now we have, for every dollar spent, basically we're getting back $2.70 with our TPA. That's over and above fee schedule. So we're about 8.4% lower than fee schedule in our overall expenses. Now, liability claims, I mean, this goes up and down and up and down. It depends what happens. But I'm tracking at the moment where we are in total claims, third-party claims that are submitted to us. And this fiscal year thus far, we are tracking approximately 40% less than we were last year, which says a lot about our overall programs and about everything that we're doing across the city. I mean, this is not just risk management, this is working with all the departments. And the loss control, the work we're doing outside to improve things for the citizens, all of this is helping to reduce the total liability claims that are being submitted to us. Now, I also wanted to cover a couple of things that risk management is able to do when we are applying some creative thought. Last year, I proposed that maybe we looked at employing an outside vendor for damage recovery services. This is where we don't have any city involvement in damages. So we don't have a city driver who runs into a stop sign or is involved in a motor vehicle accident. This is some civilian that's run into a stop sign. And we are not aware of that. And risk management does not have the ability to go and mine all the state records to find out all the information for recovering the cost of fixing that stop sign. However, there are companies out there that will do that, and they don't require upfront costs. We don't have to give them a penny until they recover something, and at that point, they take 15% and send us a check for 85%. So this is found money. It's something we would not have at all if they weren't using their magic algorithms and going out and pursuing recovery. So this contract was put in place in December of 2016, and to date we've received $40,000. So I think that's pretty good. Then when I mentioned just now light duty assignments for workers' comp employees, this is not only tasks, but in some cases this is actual income. So for instance, we had an employee who was able to help Public Works compare their trash collection fee database with the Waterworks address database. And the Waterworks address database was really out of date. So we had people who were getting their trash picked up for free. So to date, there's been over $100,000 that's been charged as a result of being able to update databases. So we are requesting the additional position of a risk management analyst. And in anticipation of Councillor Huff's question, yes, this was placed in the funding for the budget document. Currently, risk management consists of a risk manager and an administrative services employee. With the addition of that one position, we should be able to assume the additional duties that finance currently has, work to improve and enhance the safety programs, develop greater programs, established a succession plan if I accidentally leap out into Veterans Parkway and fall under a Metrobus. And we can create some adequate backups and develop some programs that currently we cannot. That analyst can assist in identifying and pricing appropriate coverage so that Columbus can garner some more savings. Some of the things that I've been looking at and that we currently don't have in place, cybersecurity coverage, we are actually in the final stages of getting that in place. There's law enforcement coverage, which probably is something that we need to be looking at in this day and age. There's also something I've been discussing with some of the underwriters in terms of inmate medical coverage, which is excess medical coverage. And those are just some suggestions, basic suggestions that we could be looking at. And finally, as I said, funding is available in the Risk Management Fund contingency. That's a very brief summary.
It's very good. Any questions of the Budget Review Committee? Well, Anne Marie, we appreciate you do. I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem, let me find you.
As I understand it, we have somebody who's doing those responsibilities, but they're not in your department.
Do you have somebody actually doing it?
As far as the additional responsibility as it relates to the facility claims, that is a function that is currently housed within the finance department. I think since I've been with the city, and I'm trying to remember the conversations that I had with the deputy city manager, there's only been a few of those facility type claims, but yes, the facility claims are currently housed in finance. We also are responsible for the renewal of the crime and property insurance. That's something that we're responsible for. So it's just, and that was housed in finance because at the time, we didn't have a risk manager. And so I think with all the things that Anne Marie has taken on and some of the programs that she developed, it just sort of makes.
It seems to make sense.
Seems to make sense
Yeah.
that some of these responsibility for liability, all the liability claims shift to our risk management area.
Well, is this in the, is this,
But I am doing those responsibilities currently.
oh,
It's me.
it's you?
Yes, it's
Okay.
me.
And you're not going to give me her.
No, you can't have her. Not, at least not till June. Well, is there any comment from staff, any kind of recommendation, thoughts on the presentation? I mean, I think is this in the budget right now?
It is not, the position itself is not in the budget. The
Okay.
funding is available in the risk management fund contingency, so if council wanted to officially add the position to the budget, there would be no budgetary impact.
Well, a contingency generally identifies emergency-type expenditures for a year. And I mean, I'm just a little curious about how that would go out. My accountant friend over here is eyeballing me like, Counselor, were you through, Mayor Pro Tem? I'm sorry, I butted in. Counselor Davis.
Is that, when you say contingency, where is it being accounted for?
It'll be accounted for in the risk management fund. The way we.
We're not counting that in our fund balance, are we?
No, sir. Not general fund balance. It's in the risk management fund.
Okay. Well, Director Emile, this is a great report, because I gave you a lot of confidence that year you came to us and told us you could make a difference. And these numbers, actually, I think they're better than what you shared with us. If I remember back, I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress, and you've done a great job handling the risk management. Now, I will tell you, when it comes to my constituents, and all, I'm not always happy with claims and requests, but I'll go to bat for them. I don't always succeed, but overall, you have saved the taxpayers of Muskogee County a lot of money in your department by what you've been doing, and I don't have a problem going into contingency, because I just look at it as that will ultimately pay for itself several times over. So do we need to add that to the list? It's not coming out of the fund balance.
You would need to add it
Mr.
to the
Budget Chair.
list, the position to the list, out of the risk management fund.
You would basically have an ad for the position in her department and then a
reduction
deletion in
to
her department of the contingency.
Contingency.
Right,
That's correct.
exactly.
Now, and explain first how you budget the contingency. I mean, I'm on your side. I think it makes great sense, but I just need to know that going forward, I mean, a salary, an employee is a pretty well dedicated expense that is, it's probably not going to go down
Right.
over the next several years. I just want to make sure that the contingency, whatever we're budgeting for that, is dependable enough to transfer over to a salary.
It is a pretty healthy contingency that we budget in
Yeah.
the risk management fund, and it's an amount that we budget, that we have been budgeting for several fiscal years. And I'll just say, with some of the things that Anne Marie has put into place and some of the reductions, we've seen a lot of reductions in our risk management fund costs as it relates to workers' comp. This year alone, we were able to reduce that allocation by $200,000. And so the way that the risk management fund works is that all the other funds pay into the risk management fund. And so for this fiscal year, we were able to see a reduction of the allocated costs to the risk management fund.
And Mr. Chairman, I was in the back for a minute, and you were asking a question, and certainly I wanted to say that I do recommend this position, and it coming from the risk management contingency, and I don't have to recap.
And I get that. I think that's fine, but I'm just curious why it would not have been in the mayor's recommended budget if this was a solid funding source. And certainly, I think the merits of what Anne Marie's done in the risk management would dictate that we would take this on by just.
Well, and I'll say that the discussion that we had throughout the budget, packaging the budget to, that the mayor would bring it forward, we dealt with the budget neutral positions, and I don't know that it was clear that, at least it wasn't to me, that it would come out of risk management contingency, and that contingency is not the general fund contingency, but risk management contingency until after the budget was prepared and submitted to you.
Okay.
And so that would be why I didn't push it forward as part of the mayor's recommended budget. But her work speaks for itself. The savings, the efficiencies that she's created, you know, we don't have to even talk about it. We can see the numbers. And I think there's more great work to be done, and with the support of this position, I think it'll pay for itself. We'll see the return on the investment.
And I think it's already been placed on the ad list, and I guess an accompanying deletion on the, or adjustment to the contingency. So we'll be able to revisit this, I think, on the 23rd anyway. So regardless, you do an amazing job, and we recognize since you've been here, you've certainly saved the city a lot of money. And yeah, I'm like Councilor Davis. We don't always like delivering the news that you give us to our constituents, but we recognize why you do what you do, and we appreciate the way you do it. Oh, Councilor Thomas.
How much money are we talking about?
With benefits, it's.
$100,000.
Oops. Sorry. With benefits, it's just a tad over 58,000.
A tad over?
58,000.
58.
And when you say the risk management fund contingency, this is a new line item to me. We've not talked about a contingency fund before. Is this money that has been budgeted for your department to pay out in the event that there is a claim that we are not having to pay out and therefore it's left over? Is that what the contingency is?
You want to
Yes and no. The contingency is built into the budget in the event that we have more in workers' comp claims or risk management settlements that we need to pay out. That is already sort of built into the operating budget of the risk management fund. So, yes.
It's trying to anticipate what claims, risk management claims we're going to have, much like we do litigation.
So
I
we do have
I guess
a
here's
set
part of
dollar
my concern, and I'm just going to use numbers as an example, okay? These are not actual numbers, I know that. If we had said that we're going to budget $100,000 for workers' comp claims, and this year we only spent $50,000 on workers' comp claim, that's $50,000 that is left over, that's in this contingency fund. But next year, if we use that $50,000 that's left over for a salary position this year, then next year we've got to budget $100,000 for workers' comp claims in addition to the $50,000 for the staff person. Isn't that the way it works?
Well, I think in years past, the reason why we have this contingency in the budget in the first place is because there was a bit of a shortfall in the risk management fund as far as for the workers' comp fund balance. In order to build the fund balance back on the workers' comp side so that we would have the necessary cash to pay out these huge workers' comp claims that we were paying. I think that was the initial reason for the contingency in the fund. And so back to your $100,000 example. So we do budget a certain amount of money for claims, for risk management settlements and workers' comp claims in the fund. The contingency exists to if we go above and beyond what we budgeted. And I will say over the past couple years with Anne Marie, we were we have been less, paid out less in workers' comp claims and risk management settlements than what we budgeted. Like I said, with this particular fiscal year for FY18, we were able to reduce the budget for the workers' comp side by $200,000 because of some of the work that Anne Marie has already done.
Anne Marie has cleared up and gotten people off workers' comp who have been on for years and years and years, and some of them were over at ACCG, as you know, and she's been able to bring those forward to you, and we've been able to clear those and get those people off workers' comp. And as a result of that, her success in doing that, that contingency is not, we've done well, and we've been able to bring the contingency down because of your success in settling and removing people from workers' comp, and you've shared those numbers with us.
You know, I think that you've done a tremendous job in risk management, and every time you come before us, it's another, for us, it's a win-win. I mean, it's a win. My only concern is that if we are budgeting more money than you are spending year after year after year, why are we doing that?
We're not. She's been able to she's been able to bring the workers' comp claims down, and so as a result, you've been able to reduce that amount you just indicated, Finance Director, by some $200,000 or more. Is that right?
That's correct. That's for the amount that we budgeted for workers' comp claims.
You reduced
We reduced that
amount
budgeted
because
line
of the
item by
success that we're
$200,000.
seeing, and we hope to continue. We hope that we're able to continue to reduce that amount based on her work.
And so will the $58,000 that you are anticipating for this position come out of that $200,000? Or is there $58,000 more somewhere in there that you don't need?
She's biting at the bit to talk about.
I just want to explain that the risk management fund is split into, has a fund balance, but it's split into two categories. One is workers' comp and one is general liability claims. And what's happened over the years is the workers' comp portion of the fund balance has continued to decline because we have had excessive workers' comp claims. Since Anne Marie has gotten here, we have kind of shifted and reversed that trend so that we're getting to a position where the risk management general liability fund balance of the risk management fund and the workers' comp fund balance are both positive numbers, because before we were spending more in workers' comp than we had collected from all the other funds, but the general liability fund balance, which is its one total fund balance, has compensated for that. And so we've been able, through Anne Marie's work with safety programs, to really get the workers' comp portion of the risk management fund in line with where it should be. And so the claims that we've paid out for workers' comp in FY15 was $1.8 million. Prior to that, we were in the $2.5 million range. And so the budget for workers' comp claims that we've typically been at 2.5, so we've kind of built in anticipating those workers' comp claims. We reduced that going forward into FY18 at 2.3 million. So we were able to reduce the total fund for risk management by that 200,000, which impacts the requirements from the other funds contributing to the risk management fund. And so the total fund still has the money in contingency, which is $500,000 for unanticipated claims. But due to the work that Anne Marie's done, we've really seen that average claim process much lower than it was in the past.
So we anticipate next budget.
So we have that same anticipated contingency that we haven't had to use in most recent years. So as we continue to move forward and we implement additional safety programs, we'll be able to continue to reduce the risk management workers' comp portion of that down, in that $500,000 that we keep in contingency might not need to be budgeted going forward, but we could continue to budget for this position.
And if those workers' comp claims come in higher than you anticipate, we still have to pay them, right?
And that's correct, but we,
then we don't anticipate that. And that's, I mean, it's the same philosophy, I think, that we use with healthcare. You know, if you're proactive and you do these things, then you prevent those huge costs in the end. If we are proactive, and Anne Marie has been proactive, and she's done great things, you know her work, and she's going to continue to do those things. But if we put the staff in place that we need, then we can continue to do better and make progress, and you're going to see the end results of that.
We're going to have an opportunity to go through this one more time when we bring all the ad deletes back. What I would request, I think, is maybe an historical perspective of how that fund grew to where it is. And I would suggest go back about 7 years, because you've been here 5, and that would show us how it was probably hit a little harder just prior to your arrival. And then if you would, give us a brief narrative or just some kind of speculative opinion on how you see this being funded in the future. And that way we'll, I think, we'll know how we got here, and we'll get from you a clearer understanding of how we're going to go forward. Okay. Does that sound okay? I think it's already on the list. Councilor Davis requested that it be placed on the list, so it's on there, and we'll get a chance to address it on the 23rd, I believe. And but if we could get that information, I think I know it helped me.
Okay, no problem. I'm always happy to share.
I know if there's one thing you have, it's statistics. So. Yeah, they'll give us that information when they bring it. All right, thank you. Oh, I've got Councilor Baker.
Yeah. It just seems like, wouldn't you have to have a permanent write-down in the contingency fund to cover?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
In order to fund a salary, wouldn't you have to have a permanent write-down in the contingency fund?
We'd have to have a permanent, what now?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes.
If you're going to fund a salary out of a contingency fund, it's no longer going to be at the same, it's not going to be a one-time adjustment.
Oh, that's correct, yes.
You got to have a permanent
contingency.
write-down.
That's
in
correct.
that fund.
But on the other end, what we anticipate with the good work and being proactive.
I understand that. I'm talking about the funding source.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're going to continue to see the contingency fund to decline as that person works with Anne Marie to do his or her work. And I think that's where the savings is going to come.
And I'm sorry, my hearing must be sort of off today.
No, I'm sure it was my question. I'm sure I wasn't asking the question right. But I'm just saying, if you're going to
right.
dedicate, you've got to have, this is an operating cost,
That's
payroll
correct.
cost. You've got to have a dedicated permanent funding source
Yes.
for it.
That's correct.
Permanent.
Yes.
Not one time.
That's
Exactly.
correct.
And if you're paying, you can't take 1 year's budgeted amount and say, we're going to convert this to a payroll position. That doesn't work. You can't
That's
do
true.
that.
That's true.
You're going to have a permanent write-down every single year in that contingency fund, whatever you've been budgeting.
Right.
It's going to have to be budgeted $58,000 less.
Right.
And-
And I think this.
And then Councilor Thomas is concerned, well, what if it spikes back up during an unusual claim season?
And
You're going to have to tell us how we address that.
exactly. And we'll have to tell you, obviously, our prescription would not be working. You know,
But-
if we see that.
Because we've talked about this in other departments.
Yeah.
Your estimate of the claims and contingencies, those are all just guesstimates. Once you put a salary, that's absolute, and it's absolute every single year.
Yes.
Your other numbers are just guesstimates, and that's where it gets a little
Right.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
But
that's,
anyway,
that's true. So going forward, what we anticipate, just based on the addition of this position and Anne Marie's area keeping up with doing the good work that they're doing, is that we would reduce that contingency going forward
You
and
don't
we have to,
You don't have
obviously.
to. That's my
Right, but
point.
then
You
I-
don't
but
have a
then-
choice anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then
Right.
to also see some other reductions in the other operating budget for the risk management fund.
Okay.
And if that amount is, if we don't see a continual decrease, then we need to take a look at Anne Marie and her new person.
Well, and again.
You know, because
Well,
something is going on.
I mean, we don't, yeah, I mean, well, that's just a conversation for, another time, but hope that, obviously we hope that doesn't happen.
I don't think that will
Yeah.
happen.
Okay.
And
I don't believe it.
reminding y'all again that we are going to get a chance to beat this mule again, so
Okay.
we're going to be able to do it on the 23rd. Counselor Davis, I think.
No, and I think when you look at the trend supports itself. You got to look, this is a we're hung up on this contingency matter. It's a restricted fund. It would be just like the integrated fund or any of the other funds. We fund personnel, we fund positions out of that all the time. But the difference here is that when you invest, you're actually investing in risk management. You're going to ultimately save money in the general fund, which is money for operations across the board because you don't have to supplement it. So that's the payoff of what we're talking about.
Okay. Any more comments, questions? Hold them until the 23rd. No, I'm just kidding. Anne Marie, thanks for livening things up and make sure we no longer stayed on track. No, no, I'm just kidding. Thank you for what you do. You really do a good job. That's what makes all these deliberations, I think, so sincere and so spirited at times. So thank you.
So next on the agenda, we have our coroner. Our coroner, Buddy Bryan, is here.
Mr. Coroner, welcome.
From my bodyguard with me today. Hello, everyone. Appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to come before you.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to kind of try to keep it simple, stupid. I don't know if we have a PowerPoint presentation. We did provide one. If not, we have a handout. Sorry, I don't have on a coat and tie. I was going home to change. I was in the field working today, been real busy. And we got called in early, so I just came busting right on.
That's fine.
I appreciate it. It's much more comfortable out in the field with this on than it is a suit and tie. Well, first of all, the first sheet just shows my proposed budget. And in that proposed budget, I requested several changes. One would be to add a deputy coroner to my staff. This is something that's well needed, has been for many years, and at one time it was a line item. It was never filled, so it was taken off. One of the main reasons behind it is, as an elected official and the department head, I'm working an enormous amount of hours. Now, a lot of mine is just mental work and not physical. But I put in about 520 hours a month. Now, that's being on call, first call, where I'm out in the field for a 24-hour period on call, and then second call. And then the other days, I'm in the office working. I'm reviewing medical records, discussing issues with families and with doctors. And as I said, it's not so much a physical as it is a mental stress lots of times. My deputies are working around 480 hours a month, being on call, first call, second call, and in the office. Well, sure, we're at home a lot, we're sleeping, but we're also called out at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're out in the field for 6 or 8 hours if it's a homicide. I experienced 2 homicides back to back. I was up 24 hours straight out on those calls. We asked for some reclassifications. We went through the process with UGA. One of those reclassifications came back positive, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. It was a recommendation. The other 2 did not. The one for Deputy Coroner Charles Newton did not. Administrative Assistant Malika Hampton did not come back as a recommendation. As far as the operating expense, we asked for a $200 increase in our mail budget, just due to the enormous amount of mail that we're having to send out now to attorneys, families, things of that nature. And then under capital outlay, we asked for $2,000 for a new computer for my secretary. Hers is antiquated. Most of the programs aren't working, but that's being tended to. We're working with IT on that. The next page will show the mayor's recommended budget. When I took office in 2013, I reduced our budget by 2.8% after she had asked me to reduce it by 1.5%. I saw where we can make some changes to the positive. That's part of my being in the corporate world my whole life. The next year, we reduced it by 1.5%. We did the same thing the next year. And then last year, we kind of kept it at an even balance because we were running on a shoestring. But we've been able to maintain. We haven't over-exceeded our budget. We've been able to maintain, and that's just through smart business. That's through running my department as it is a business. I think more department heads should be running it as if it were their own home, their own business, like I do. We could see a change here in the city of Columbus. On the next page, I want to make a comparison. There are 159 counties in the state of Georgia. 5 of those counties fall under the medical examiner up in Atlanta, Fulton County, DeKalb County. The only 2 counties that we can compare Columbus to is Augusta and Macon. The 3 of us are salaried. Columbus has the largest population. Columbus also has more death investigations than any of the other counties. Even though Augusta is showing 935 death investigations, that's not a true figure because he's doing nursing homes and he's not required to do so. If you look at the annual budget, my budget's $289,164. The Augusta budget is $763,000. The Macon budget is $322,000. Then let's look at the salaries. Let's take into consideration that the city of Columbus, former coroner, Honorable Don Kilgore, kept the salary very low to keep anybody from running against him. He did that on purpose for a lot of years. That only hurt future coroners. My salary is $60,000. The Augusta coroner is $80,000, and the Macon coroner is $78,000. I have 2 full-time coroner deputies. Augusta has 4, and Macon has 3. We need to even the playing field, people. We need to get me some help in my office, and we need to bring the pay up to the level that it should be. I've introduced several programs here in Columbus that have been money savers. The pauper and indigent program, for one. They all come through my office now, the majority of them anyway, and we've been able to save the city thousands of dollars. We also have a will program that we provide for the citizens. We work diligently with the Child Fatality Review Board and the Homeless Network. The next page was brought to my attention is the city charter. And when I look at it, I see the citizens of Columbus. Now, those are my boss. People ask me, who's your boss? I said, it's the citizens of Columbus. They elected me. They trust me to do the right thing and make the right decisions. And then the first line, you have the mayor, the council, the coroner, tax commissioner, the sheriff, and the marshal. I feel like that I deserve the recognition for the hard work and dedication. The next page, of course, is just an outline. But what I'll do, how I do it, you can take a few minutes and read about it. The next one is concerning the salary increase. It would allow me to have more time to do my administrative work. And that is the majority of my work, is administrative. The next 2 pages really are just numbers showing 2016, 17, and 18. There was a decrease in those funds The next page, there was a slight increase. The next page we're looking at is an additional deputy coroner, the breakdown of the salary and the benefits and the car and the computer and the allowance. If you don't consider giving me a full-time deputy, if you will at least consider maybe giving me a part-time deputy so that they can work from 8 to 5 and I can tend to my administrative skills and they can make calls during the day. The next page, I'm changing hats now. Listen, I'm a stand-up guy. And I'm standing up for this man right here, Chief Deputy Freeman Worley. Freeman has been with the City of Columbus 28 years. He's been in the coroner's office 18 years. He's dedicated to public service. He's extremely knowledgeable. He's the top of the line when it comes right to it. When I asked for the reclassifications, we did our due diligence, sent in our paperwork, and the University of Georgia recommended that he be reclassified. Now you say, well, you're already calling him Chief Deputy. In 2008, the previous coroner, Bill Thrower, had a big dedication service, made Freeman Chief Deputy Coroner. You'll see a picture of him presenting him with a badge. For 9 years, he has been known as Chief Deputy Coroner Freeman Worley. He has taken on the responsibility of that position by taking on additional workloads. He was never recognized by the city. He never got that reclassification because Bill Thrower didn't follow the protocol, nor did he get any money or any benefits from the hard work for the last 9 years. So when I say I'm a stand-up man, I stand up for this guy right here because he stands up for me. You can look at his resume, you can look at what all he's done and accomplished and how dedicated he is. I want the city council to approve his reclassification. It would mean a very minimum increase in his income, about $5,000 a year. But what it means to me is that he finally gets recognized for what he's done and what he will continue to do for this city. Now, with that having been said, I'll take everything else off the table, everything I've asked for, except for granting him the right to be declared Chief Deputy Coroner for Columbus, Georgia, and receive that minimum increase going from a grade 16 to a grade 18. And if you can do that for me, then I will appreciate it very much. The rest of it, we'll just keep working those hard hours for our citizens. We'll keep doing our job the way we know how to do it best. And we'll be proud because he's been recognized for what he is. Chief Deputy Coroner Freeman Worley. That's it.
Mr. Bryan, I tell you, before we move on to, I think, addressing your request, I want to publicly thank you because I know in years past, you've always been extremely mindful of our budget situation and very willing and to proactively work with the government to try to make sure things were done. You have held things down on your end. You've taken on extra work. You've done all kinds of things. I just want to tell you how much we appreciate your understanding of some of the unfortunate restrictions that we're under with regards to being able to disseminate money. So with that
Appreciate
said,
that.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to add to the add and delete list of part-time coroner for Mr. Bryan's office. We're going to have to work that out.
Very minimum amount
It's,
of money.
is that, there would be no benefits for that position, is that right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Part-time. Part-time. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Any other comments or, you know, I think, hang on just a second. We've got Counselor Davis.
Mr. Coroner, I'm just looking through here. Now, your request is, what are you requesting here?
Well, I was actually requesting a full-time deputy so we could break the schedule down a whole lot.
What are you, dollar amount?
Well, it proposed about $78,000 with the salary, the benefits, and the car.
So it's a new position?
A new position, yes, sir.
Okay.
Which was a line item at one time, and it was taken away because it was never filled.
Okay. And look, we appreciate all you do. I will be honest with you, straightforward. This kind of reminds me of what we went through with the marshal a couple of years back, and same type of situation. He wanted to add a deputy, well, he wouldn't be the deputy, maybe be a chief deputy marshal. But in order to do that, he was willing to give up something. And that's what I'm asking you. What are you willing to give up here?
I'm willing to give up a full-time deputy to have my man reclassified, as he should be, to Chief Deputy Coroner Freeman Worley and receive the compensation to move from a grade 16 to a grade 18, which means about $5,000.
You're willing to give up one of your deputies?
I'm willing to give up the one I'm requesting.
He's requesting one.
So, well, that's just one you're requesting, but everybody has a request.
Do you see the significance in what this man has done over the last 9 years?
Well, no, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at
What do you want me to give up?
Well, I'm looking at a request of $155,000 in personal services here
That would be-
versus $2,200 in operations. That's a little skewed, isn't it?
That would be the car for the deputy, a new deputy. 20,000 would have been the car for the new deputy.
There's no
2,000
car,
would be
no.
for the computer that's already been taken care of.
I'm looking at strictly personnel services.
Malika Hampton
His salary.
was not recommended to obtain an increase, and neither was Charles Newton. The other deputy is 88,000. You want my firstborn child, man, I'll give you anything to get this guy
Well, no,
recognized as chief deputy coroner. That's it.
That's not what I'm asking you. That's not what I'm asking you here. If we got X to work with, and over the years now, you've been really, really gracious every year coming in. I don't have any needs. I've got everything taken care of.
Yes, sir.
And now I feel like the chickens have come home to roost.
Well, we had.
With all due respect. Now,
We had 850 death investigations last year. Year before that, we had 670. So we had an increase of over 100 death cases last year, and I was still able to maintain being under my budget.
You're doing a good job.
I appreciate it. I am doing a good job. I'm doing a great job, as a matter of
But,
fact, and citizens of
what
Columbus
I'm-
absolutely love me. And I plan on being around for a long time, but I just want justification.
No.
Nickel and dime, you know, I've been,
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. Maybe I've lost you here. You're asking only for my colleague just says you're only asking for $5,000.
I'm asking for him to be reclassified to Chief Deputy Coroner, which he is and should be, to be approved. And with that, he's going to go from a grade 16 to a grade 18, which will be around $5,000. I had Malika call budget. That's what she told me. So if I can walk out of this room knowing that my man here
Okay.
has been reclassified and gets that little bitty raise, then I'm a satisfied man. I'll continue to work 520 hours a month. He'll continue to work 480 hours.
No. I'm just trying to get, I'm trying to get on the same page with you.
Okay.
Because what I asked you earlier is you said you were adding a new position in 88.
We're requesting one.
Okay, so you're actually just,
I'll throw it off the table.
And I think
In order for him.
if I may, just in an
You
attempt to
understand?
clarify.
I'm
I
not
think-
understanding you.
I think what he's done is he's come in with some, I think,
What I need.
very reasonable requests to run his office, but he also recognizes the budget situation. He's requested a bump in salary. He's requested a deputy to assistant coroner to help him. And he's requested that we honor a reclassification made by his predecessor, and he says that that's significant enough to pull everything else he's requesting off the table if he can just get this reclassification recognized, which would be a $5,000 net hit
Right.
to his budget, as opposed to the increase in his salary.
So you're asking for a current increase. You're just asking for a current increase in salary.
He's asking
Position's
for a
already there.
reclass. It's a reclass.
Okay,
It's a public-
I thought you were creating a new position along with the other requests, so that's where I'm trying to sort between. So that's, nobody's put a dollar amount on the table until I just heard it. But that's what I was trying to get to, so, we're getting there, we're getting close to the same page. But it does remind me, I mean, that's, I was honest in telling you in the beginning and not understanding, that's what we did before with the marshal, where he was willing to give up 2 spots, give up 2 of his deputies to add another guy at the top, and basically said the same thing you just told us. And, I just want to make sure that I'm, looking at this and looking at everybody fairly and doing the right thing. So
Yes, sir, I appreciate it.
I'm on the same page with you now.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Good work.
Thank you.
That's hard work.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So declare,
I want to add the reclass that was approved by UGA to go from a 16 to 18.
Put that on the ad list.
and the total cost for that reclassification is $2,947. Because Mr. Freeman, Worley, I'm sorry, is at his present salary, because he's an existing employee, he would go up to 2 steps out on the scale. And so that difference is $2,947. I think what the coroner is saying with the $5,000 is putting him out, giving him additional steps out on the scale, as opposed to what he would be entitled to as any other employee being reclassified.
And I think what I heard, and I don't want to speak for it, but I think what I heard these gentlemen say is that the significance of this is the recognition of an action that was taken and never publicly ratified by the government. So while I'm sure he'd rather have 5, he'd rather have 50, the whole point is to confirm the action taken well-intended but inappropriately by Mr. Bryan's predecessor. So let's put that on the ad list, and then when it comes back, we'll have an opportunity to look at the extra individual that has been put on there and the reclass, and we'll decide between which one or both or none. So that'll be up to us then. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. I appreciate what y'all do as well. I wouldn't want your job.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait just a second. I've got Councilor Huff.
Question, I just want to be clear when we get back on add delete. We're adding Deputy Worley, and then that, in retrospect, we don't have to worry about the part-time person?
That would be fine. If I can get him what he deserves, we'll take the rest of it off the table.
Okay.
Absolutely, I'd be glad to.
Thank
I'd
you.
rather have it. I mean, I deserve it, and I'll be back next year with the same proposal. I won't have to worry about making him happy.
Gotcha.
But it's all good, people.
Councilor Allen.
Thank y'all.
Mr. Coroner, with all due respect, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do both of them. So I'm going to ask that we take the part-time deputy off, and then we'll try to deal with Mr. Worley's recognition.
I'm fine with that, and I appreciate that, Gary, very much.
Mr. Bryan, thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good day.
You got to leave? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, they because of him, because of all right. Moving on.
Moving on. Next on the agenda, we have Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge to talk about the transportation projects.
And Josh is passing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Thomas.
Before Ms. Hodge starts, I have noticed that our Trade Center folks are in the audience, and I don't see them on the agenda. Are they on the agenda later today?
It's for the reclassification discussion.
I'm sorry?
The
And
reclassifications
clerk's
On the
office.
discussion.
reclass, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what Tiasha is passing out to you, there's two handouts. One is labeled Transportation Projects. The other is labeled Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax Discretionary. So I'm going to start with the transportation projects. And what this is a continuation of our planning as we're moving forward with transportation projects and making them a part of the budget process for each fiscal year to let you know what projects we're recommending to be funded in FY18. And so I'll start with the transportation projects. The projects that we're recommending for FY18 include roundabouts at Brown Avenue, Casita Road, and Andrews Road, as well as a roundabout at Casita Road, 23rd Avenue, and North Lumpkin. The bridges would be Decatur and Melrose bridges. We did have that discussion when we approved two other bridges. We didn't have enough funding. We needed to come back in FY18 for additional funding. Those have already been bid out, and so we know the price on those. So those require an additional $700,000 and $600,000 for Melrose and Decatur. They were funded prior to FY16 originally as we were doing the design work. We bid them out in 17, and so you're not seeing the prior year's allocation on this. This starts in FY16. There's also additional funding requested for the Benning Drive Bridge as we're moving forward with that bridge replacement. In the sidewalks, safety items, that additional $100,000 to maintain park ADA, sidewalks, guardrails, the fiber interconnect, and the traffic calming. So we've allocated $100,000 for each of those categories for FY18. The other projects, as you follow down on page 2, would include a parking lot at the City Mills as part of the Riverwalk City Mills project, as well as the parking lot that we discussed as access for citizens at the Riverwalk at the Westville location. Resurfacing at just over $2.5 million. We do anticipate LMIG allocation in FY18 of $1.5 million, and at this point we have not allocated LMIG to a particular project. We have quite a few projects out for bid, so we want to make sure that if there's any that come in over bid, that we have this funding available that could be allocated to one of those projects. So as we move into FY18, we'll be coming back to council for approval to allocate LMIG to a specific project.
How many miles does that $2.5 million get us resurfaced?
We've been doing about 10 miles a year, so
With that amount?
with that 2.5.
Okay.
So that brings us a total of $10,125,000, and that's allocated from T-SPLOS discretionary, the paving fund, the OLOS road infrastructure money, the LMIG at 1.5, and also we'll be seeking a grant from GDOT of the Z230 funds in the total of $2.4 million, and those are for the two roundabouts. And the discretionary funds, the match for those will come from the T-SPLOS discretionary funds.
All right, Councilor Allen?
Maybe you just talked about it, but in the first column on the first page, there are a list of roundabouts. I didn't hear you say anything about the Beaver Run.
I was just going through the ones that we're recommending for FY18. The Beaver Run Road roundabout is something that GDOT has taken on as their project. So we're leaving it on the sheet. It's now become a GDOT project and not a locally funded project. So that's why you'll see a 0 for a total. But at this time, they're taking on that project and moving forward with that. But we don't want to lose sight of that project in case GDOT, for some reason, doesn't provide the funding for that project.
Okay, just to clarify, that's at the intersection of Macon Road and Highway 80. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. All
Right there at the Chevron gas station.
Right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And just to move on to the second handout, this is specifically the allocations for T-Splosh discretionary that is included on part of the transportation, but just to walk through those. And again, we've allocated those out based on what council has approved in Resolution 239-13. We don't want to exceed those allocations that council has made to each one of the different components of the transportation projects to include road improvements, bridge and culvert repair, maintenance and safety improvements, future operations and matching funds. And then the last category is alternative transportation, which includes sidewalks. So for FY18, part of the resurfacing will come from T-Splosh discretionary at $1.6 million. The Benning Drive Bridge at $800,000. Traffic calming at $100,000. Guardrails at $100,000. The match for the M230 funds is $600,000, and that would be for those 2 roundabout projects. And then sidewalks at $100,000. And that's a total of $3.3 million. And you can see at the bottom of page 2, the cumulative balances in each one of those categories and what will be remaining at the end of FY18 in those categories is a total of $1.5 million. So at the time we get to the end of FY18, there'll be still a balance that has not been allocated to projects of just over $1.5 million. And I'll entertain any questions, but these are the projects that we're recommending to move forward with in FY18.
Councilor Garrett.
Director Hodge, with the traffic calming, is that going to bring back any money for speed tables or speed bumps? I get a lot of requests from my constituents for those.
This does not reinstate the speed bump program. It only funds those locations that have been approved when we did have the program in place.
Okay, so anything, when was the program put in place? So when would requests basically not be considered?
We have, I believe it was FY15 that the program was eliminated. The staffing for that program was eliminated. Okay. So this is just providing allocation to those locations that went through the process and were approved for some type of a traffic calming device.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions or comments? There is one, I'm sorry. Or would Glenn or Councilor Davis?
Yeah, Deputy City Manager Hodge, in talking about the transportation projects with all the, we've got a lot of projects coming up, and in the next few years we got several, including the T-Splots as well. How are you doing, your department? How are you doing with management and managing all these projects?
Ryan Pruitt is our project manager. He's done a really good job staying on top of those. He works in the engineering department under Donna Newman. John Hutchinson, who previously came from that role, is assisting as needed in those projects. But he's doing a good job maintaining and keeping up with all the projects that are currently under construction.
Well, we're going to have a lot on our plate for sure. Is your department, are you looking into maybe contracting out with consultants or maybe contracting with the DOT? I think they even have engineers that they would probably hire out for these projects and things like that, or just working with civil engineering firms and all to help manage some of these if the load gets too heavy and to move them along?
And a lot of the projects, the T-Splosh projects, some are being done in-house, but the Spiderweb project is being done in-house, but the interchanges with Buena Vista Road and 185, Casita Road and 185, and the one at Custer Road, those are managed by GDOT. So some of the T-Splosh projects will be managed internally and some will be managed by GDOT, but we meet with them on a regular basis along with our engineers that are designing these projects. So we have support from GDOT and outside engineers on these projects.
So you don't foresee any of the issues that might arise on the management side of these projects coming up where you would need some kind of assistance in construction management?
If we see that we have a need for that, we'll definitely bring that back to council and notify you. At this point, we're able to manage the projects that we have currently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Assistant City Manager, thank you, ma'am.
All right, moving along. Next item on the agenda is vehicle replacement policy discussion from our presentation from our other Deputy City Manager, Lisa Goodwin.
You know, I wonder if we could, I know we've got some people here waiting on the reclassification discussion, and I think this could be lengthy.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but I just know we've got some folks waiting, and I know a couple of council members are going to have to leave shortly, so I thought maybe we could go to that. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Any objections? Okay, let's do that.
All right, so
They've been patiently waiting.
next up on the agenda is a discussion concerning the reclassifications that are in the mayor's proposed budget. As you know, in the general fund, there were reclassifications for our Parks and Recreation Department, our Elections Department. Unfortunately, our Director of Elections is out of town at a mandatory training, so she's unable to be here at this particular time. But all of the other departments in which a reclassification was submitted in the mayor's proposed budget, they're here. Like I said, in the general fund, it was Parks and Recreations, Elections, the Clerk of Municipal Court, and then also in our enterprise funds, we had the Civic Center, there was a reclassification there, and in our Trade Center fund, there was a reclassification. So
These are all in the budget, correct?
and I'm sorry, in the general fund, the city manager's office has a reclassification.
Okay,
as
and
well.
these are all in the budget? in
These
the
are
mayor's-
already in
okay.
the budget. These are budget neutral reclassifications, and what I mean by budget neutral, it was a salary personnel adjustment that was made to accommodate these reclassifications.
Are there any questions, or is,
Are those listed somewhere?
yeah, is there a presentation?
They are listed in the mayor's proposed, but in the mayor's budget letter. Page 15. That's what I'm told. Ma'am? Okay.
Reclass.
Thank you.
Starts on what, page 4? Okay. It's in the budget book on 14? Yeah, it's, there you go.
And, Mr. Chairman, we did
Yes.
tell Director, Elections Director Nancy Boren that we would ask you to delay discussing her positions until we can get her here at council. She's out of town, as the Finance Director indicated, on mandatory training, and so we told her that we thought you would be willing to do that.
Okay, I think that'll be fine. We'll bring her back in here later. You have Sharon, I didn't see her. I may have it in here. I may have it in here too. Let's see.
All right, so first up to the podium is our Parks and Recreations Department.
I got it. You can just.
And just Randy, if you have any questions related to the reclassifications in Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, all of these are,
think anybody has any questions for us. No questions?
I know we've all seen these when the mayor presented her budget letter, and I frankly had forgotten that they were in there. Does anybody have any questions, or would you like a brief summary from Ms. Browder on the necessity of these reclasses? Okay. Ms. Browder, if you would just give us a brief summary of what necessitated this.
Certainly. The first position that we have listed is a park maintenance supervisor, which is currently at a grade 14, and we're requesting to move it to a position that we previously had in our department, which is a parks manager, grade 17. If you notice over to the right, the amount is $6,403. And I want to also make mention, because it correlates directly to the next position that's below that, meaning that our community schools district supervisor that we currently are budgeted for at a grade 16, we're requesting to move that to a grade 14. So essentially, we would swap those two positions to make us budget neutral. In other words, also, our current position that we have that's a grade 14 that's in park maintenance, he gets overtime. And so this position moving to a 17 would not allow us to have overtime. And so we would actually have some cost savings due to the fact that there would no longer be overtime for that position. So saying all that to say, we would go from currently having a grade 14 in park maintenance to a 17. And then in community schools, we would go from a 16 and we would drop back to a 14. We're just asking to sort of move positions within our own department and come in under a little bit reduction of what we are currently because of the overtime.
Councilor Allen?
Is this a new person, or is this the same employee? Has the person that was the G14, what you want to move to a G17, did the G14 retire?
It would be a vacancy we would advertise to fill, and obviously we would look to try to fill from within the department, honestly, but it would be advertised to fill.
Well, I'll just throw this on the table. The way it works in the corporate world, you are promoted to a position or given an opportunity to work, and once you've proven yourself, then you get this kind of reclass. So just for everybody's input, if you're going to advertise and then go out and hire somebody in, they haven't earned the G17 yet, I would, in my mind, I would start them at the G14. Next year, we could look at them being the G17 if they've proven themselves. But
can
I understand there's a salary swap, and you're looking at roughly $2,300 difference. But
I need to also make mention, just so for clarification, and this is my fault, the position that we currently have, it's the grade 16, is vacant. There is no one in that position. So looking to fill, we still have one vacancy at this point. So what we would do is use that, potentially the grade 17, to fill the position, and then we would go ahead and fill that 14, because we currently have one of those positions open. So we wouldn't be adding a third person, I guess is my thing. We would still only have two people. Does that help a little bit?
Let's stay on the park maintenance supervisor. That's the one I was talking about.
Yes, sir.
That position is vacant, you're going to advertise at a 17.
The 17 would be vacant, yes. But it relates to our community schools position, because that's the position that we don't currently have anyone in.
I understand there's no one in the community schools. Who is the G14 now? Is that person working?
Yes.
And you're going to promote them to a G17?
That position is going from a supervisor to a manager.
Of course, I didn't get the question, but I think what you're trying to do is, once you get the position authorized, you're going to advertise it and let all compete
Yes.
for the position?
Yes, but we
So that-
would advertise for city employees only.
And then,
Look to hire
so
from
with
within.
city employees only, that means there are no external candidates.
Correct.
And your internal candidates will get to compete, and you're going to hire the best qualified person.
Correct, yes.
Is what you're trying to do,
Yes. In the vacant position.
in the vacant position.
So it could be that.
So which one's vacant?
Park maintenance supervisor.
No, because we currently don't have a park
Yeah.
maintenance supervisor.
So what you, as I understand it, in your park maintenance division, there's one leader,
That's correct.
and that person is near or at retirement,
That is correct.
and there is no assistant director.
No, sir, there's not.
There is no apparent second in charge. And of course, this position, I won't name any of the previous people, but right now, I'll just say that Tommy Gross is in that position. And if Tommy Gross were to leave tomorrow, you'd have to find someone in the ranks to step up, and you're trying to prepare someone
Yes,
to take over when Tommy retires or decides to leave. And you need someone ready to go because it takes care of all the parks maintenance. I mean, you've got 19 acres of parks in green space.
we have
throughout the
51
city.
parks, a little over 2,000 acres, and so, yes.
And so what you want to do with that is, she wants to search within the organization and find internally, not go outside and get a candidate, the best person to be there to assist and learn and work under Tommy Gross, that when he retires or leaves, they can just step into the position. That's what I understand.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And-
And what we would be looking for is grade 14s to apply for the 17, and that would leave us a grade 14 vacancy.
You backfill that
So we'd
position.
backfill that position. Therefore, we're not trying to have a third position. We would only have the two. And so that would give us our other grade 14 in our community schools division.
So what grade is the person that's over this area now?
We don't, in which division? I'm sorry.
Well, I think city manager.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's a 19 currently. We only have the one person that, and we don't have anyone right underneath him at all.
Well, I guess my comparison to the corporate world is you're wanting to bring somebody in at a 17 and advertise it, put them in there, but they haven't proven themselves yet. You don't know if that's the permanent person.
They have, but that's not our process. We have to open it for all candidates to be equal, to allow others the
I
opportunity to apply.
understand that, but my point is that you're making the position a 17. It was a 14. You're making it a 17, you're going to advertise it, and you're bringing somebody in at 17 to be number 2, to take over for the person that's going to retire.
Yes.
They haven't proven themselves yet. You don't know until they get in the job and they start working whether or not they deserve the 17. Why not hire them in at a 14, let it play out a year, and if they deserve it, then move them to the 16 or
That's what we were
17 or
doing.
whatever it is.
That's what we're
And
doing.
and I think your concern
That's what we're
is that they would be, you would have a 14 supervising other 14s.
No, you would have a 18 supervising a 14.
No. We
What's that?
only
You
have a
just-
19 now.
You
and
have a
that-
19 supervising a 14.
Right. The 17 would be the next tier.
Yeah.
If you move it to 17. If we leave it alone, you got a 19 supervising a 14.
And then that 14 would have people that he or she would be supervising.
That's right.
And I think her thing is there are other 14s that they would then.
That's okay. That's fine. We have VPs reporting to VPs. It's okay. It'll work.
Well,
There's no probationary period in the city. We bring people in and start them out at the highest level. We don't let them prove themselves. I just don't understand that.
well, I think you're asking that there be a hierarchy in place, and you will seek from your 14s the best person to move into that position, to be in a training mode, and there was a separation in pay from who they would be supervising, and that is your request today.
That is, and it's exactly though as Counselor Allen has suggested, that they have proven themselves. We have multiple 14s that are capable of being in that 17 level that have proven themselves, and that's why this would be that opportunity for us to interview those candidates at that position. And it would only come from our grade 14s, and we only currently have about 8 employees currently in this division, and there are several of them that have proven themselves, but we have no opportunity as the way our current system is laid out as far as the positions. We don't have that opportunity because we don't currently have this position, and we're able at this time to make a change within our own department without asking for additional funding to better adjust and better regulate as far as having succession planning, because we do have a division manager, as city manager said, that will be retiring in the next few years, and I want to make sure that our city and our department is well in its way to making being sustainable once that person is gone, and this is our best opportunity at this time to do so.
I understand your desire, and I admire you for doing that. My concern is it should be a step process. You have a lot of 14s out there that could fit the 15. The next year come to the 16. The next year work them in, phase it in.
We don't have those positions. We don't have any of those positions. This is the position that used to hold, and it was done away with in our budget.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I was just saying, if you start the park maintenance, take the 14 and start them in the job this year. Next year, come back and move them to a 15, if you're satisfied with their work level. You're saying the person all the 14s you have now are capable of moving up. So once you select one, then they will move up to, and your experience, they're changing from the job they're doing now to the job that Tommy's doing.
No, sir, that's why we're asking for the 17, and this position is what UGA classed it for our department. We don't have a 15, 16, as you said. That's just not the steps within our department. We don't have those type positions. Our positions go from this 14 to the 17, and this is I'm sorry, from the 17 to the 19, but currently, right, I'm sorry. Currently, they go from the 14 to the 19 because the 17s were done away with years ago as far as part of the budget process when we were needing positions. And we had 2 of those. When our department was much larger, we actually had the 19, then we had 2 17s, and then from there we went downward.
So did the UGA approve this move from a 14 to a 17?
Based on the job
Yes.
description, yes, sir.
Have they approved this in 2017?
We just got the approvals back from UGA.
But this was
and
not one
And this
that
is
we
what they
had to-
recommend.
Can I see a copy of that?
Sure.
Not today, but
You have a
whenever you
copy
get it.
with you? But we can get it to you.
Our-
All of the ones that are being presented to you for reclass have been reviewed and signed off on by UGA.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Counselor Thomas?
I'm not sure that I followed all that you said, but currently, there is no one in the position of G17, is that correct?
No, ma'am, we don't have a grade 17 position.
So there's no one in that position at this time?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. There is someone, however, in the park maintenance supervisor 14 position, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, that is correct, on the
Okay.
14.
And you anticipate that one of those G14s will interview and be selected for the G17?
Yes, ma'am.
And then will you fill the G14 position?
We would, but not in park maintenance, not in park services. That would be the position that would be in community schools, because we currently, if you look down to the next line, we currently have the grade 16 that we're wanting to make a 14, and we don't have anyone in that position at all. So we would not be losing anyone. Essentially, we would still remain with 2 positions. It would just go from what it is currently in a 14 position in park services, a 16 in community schools. It would switch, and it would be a 17 in park services and a 14 in community schools. And even though that is a step up in position, we are still saving money because currently the grade 14 that is in park services gets overtime because of the position that he's currently in. This would do away with.
And are
the-
you saying then that there is currently someone in the community school supervisor 16?
No, ma'am.
No.
It is vacant, and that's why we have the
Recreation
opportunity.
program specialist 14? Is
We
there
do not,
someone there?
we currently do not have anyone in that position and currently do not have that position. That's why we're asking to take the 16 and make it a lower position.
So you don't have anybody in those community school positions? Is
No,
that what
ma'am.
you're saying?
No, we do not at this
It's a
time.
vacancy.
It's a vacancy, yeah, and that's why we have the opportunity to make this switch at this time, to realign
And
the
so you're
department.
going to eliminate those positions?
No, we would remain, we would keep the 14 in community schools only. We would no longer have the 16
You
in
would
community
eliminate
schools.
one of those positions?
Yes.
So
Well,
at the end of the day.
Not necessarily eliminate it, we
well-
would use it to offset the park
Yeah,
services.
That's where the budget neutral is going to come from. She's going to go from a 16 to a 14 in the community schools position, and from a 14 to a 17 in park maintenance to provide the training and preparation for the person that's going to come behind the division manager. And it's all budget neutral, and it's just administrative, but it's budget neutral.
Holly, right now we're talking about 4 positions. We're talking about park maintenance 14, park manager 17, community schools 16, and recreation program specialist 14. Of those 4 positions, how many people do you have right now filling those positions?
One,
The park maintenance supervisor, right? The
yes.
14. If this is approved, how many people will you have in those 4 positions?
2, we would do away with the 14 in park maintenance. We would do away with the 16 in community schools. We would remain having the 17 in park maintenance and the 14 in community schools, and that's all we would have.
Okay. And then if you, and so you're going to do away with those empty positions, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I think I got it. I was trying to decide if there was going to be a third person
No,
He's
in
on
one of
third
those
base.
other positions, but there's not, right?
no, ma'am. That's correct. We only hope to have 2 positions when it's all said and done, and I'm very sorry, it is confusing. But we're just trying to align the department in a better way and make use of the positions we currently have in a better way.
And the position moving from park maintenance supervisor to park manager has a different set of obligations, right? I mean, a different job description.
Yes.
So that currently that 14 earns overtime, but you're going to change their job description so that they no longer are eligible for overtime. Is that correct?
Not the job description, but the position, the change of the position itself would not allow them to accrue overtime at the grade 17.
The 14 gets overtime because it's an exempt, non-exempt position.
Right.
If that person becomes a 17.
With different
and they
job
work, and they work the same
job
hours,
description.
they don't get overtime.
But with different job description, right?
Different job description, and that's according to FLSA.
Advancing the overtime to a salary increase.
Okay, thank you.
All
Well,
right. Any actions requested by council? It's in the budget, and thank you.
Thank you.
I think next. I think next up is the clerk of municipal court, because elections is coming in another time. Is that right? Welcome.
Yes, that's correct. It's the clerk of municipal court. They're reclassifying a deputy clerk 2, grade 12, to a senior deputy clerk, grade 14, and it is also offset by overtime.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. And I'm sorry Ms. Bishop couldn't be here today. She had a little minor procedure done yesterday at the hospital, so she'll be
We hope
better.
she's okay.
She is, thank you. And the only issue I'm here today is to discuss the upgrade of the position, the G12 to G14. I have a deputy clerk that's been with us for 9 years, and what she does is a very tremendous job. She oversees the office to a certain extent. She does court, she does our docket, she does all our judgments. She acts as a regular clerk, you know, she greets the customer when they come in, wait on the customer, assist them. You know, she goes over and beyond. I have 14 positions in my office already, and they have been there less than the less time that she has been there. And I just think that with all the work she does, she fills in for everyone, she helps everyone, she knows the office inside and out, and she can go in any position and work that position. I really feel that it's about time for her to be upgraded to a G14. And it will be budget neutral because of the fact, what I'm asking is that my overtime be decreased so that I can compensate her for this position. And we're willing to take that decrease in overtime.
Okay, any questions or comments? Counselor Allen?
I was just wondering if the decrease in overtime makes it budget neutral, because you have to have a decrease in overtime every year to give her the salary increase.
And I do understand that, well, if my overtime stays exactly like it is. And we're willing to take that chance with it and everything, because I feel that she do deserve this position. And we're willing to, instead of paying out the overtime, we're willing to do more as far as compensating everyone with comp time. And they can go up, you know, we can utilize it that way. So we have an agreement with that. But I really feel like that she deserved this position, and we're willing to take the decrease if we have to take it each year.
How much do you receive in overtime each year?
It was $23,000. I don't know how much it was. And her position, and that's with benefits, will only be the $3,828. And like I said, that's with benefits.
So the 3771 we're showing, you're saying 3831 is with benefits? What?
Oh, is with overtime now? Oh.
The amount that we're showing, I'm showing in the book is 3771. And I think she made a statement of 3831. Was that what she said?
Well, that was the initial, it was based on the initial with amount, yeah.
She's just pulling that amount from the requested budget summary that we provide to all the departments when they sit down with the mayor and the city manager, and that was just based on the preliminary allocations, contribution rates for pension that did change as we finalized the budget. So it's the 3771.
Okay, my question to you is, how do we track this? I mean, do we reduce their overtime from 23,000 to 19?
Yes, it's a permanent reduction in overtime.
Okay, now, what happens when they get to the 19 and they start working overtime and they go past 19?
But that's why, I'm sorry, sir, that's why we're going to utilize the comp time then. So it would be no, if we happen to go over, we will just make it up with comp time, and we're willing to do that.
Can you do that legally?
Yes?
Yes.
I'm told I can.
Yes, the city offers compensatory time in lieu of overtime across the board, throughout all departments. That's an option.
Okay, if we reduce the overtime from 23 to 19 this year, will we reduce it from 19 to 15 next year?
No, sir, it'll stay at the 19,000 level because she's already made the reduction in this year's budget to account for the increase for this reclassification.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? Anybody else with a comment or question for the clerk's office? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please tell Ms. Bishop we wish her a speedy recovery.
I will, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I'm next.
No. No, just kidding. I just wanted to.
Let me just, my reclass is budget neutral, is about CCGTV. I think we all know that CCGTV provides a vital program and transparency to the citizens of Columbus through city council meetings and budget meetings and planning advisory commission meetings, community programs that are televised. They go out on site, on scene, they work with departments. And it's all done with one employee. And we've allowed a citizen service center tech to help because obviously one employee can't run CCGTV from the back room and be out here, and they can't go and do all the things that we require them to do to manage and run the CCGTV by themselves. The one concern that I've had for a number of years is that if something happens to our CCGTV manager, if he decides to leave, we are going to have a crisis. We oftentimes have somewhat of a crisis when our system goes down or the sound is not coming through. And so I'm requesting that we convert the Citizen Service Center tech position to communications and multimedia specialist. When we sent it to UGA, they sent back a grade 14. The position is currently a grade 10. That's a difference of $7,551. I have 2 part-time positions in the city manager's office and want to reduce one of the part-time positions by $7,551 and reclass this position, the Citizen Service Center tech position, as approved in terms of pay by UGA, and that person will become a permanent member of the CCGTV, and we would have 2 people in CCGTV to help us continue to provide the programming and transparency that the citizens have come to enjoy here with the city. That is the basis of this request.
He's a good value.
Yes.
Any comments or questions of the city manager about the CCGTV reclass? All right, thank you. Next up, I think it says Metra. That's a new position.
The next department up with the reclassifications is the Trade Center, where they're reclassifying an accounting tech G12 to an office manager of G14.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Haley Henderson, the current Assistant Director for the Columbus, Georgia Convention Trade Center. Also have with me Mr. Larry Campbell, as well as our Finance Director, Ryan Parks. As stated, we're here to talk about the reclassification of the Accounting Technician G12 to an Office Manager of G14. The Accounting Technician currently does all the normal functions of an accounting tech. This can anything be from accounts receivables, accounts payables, collects and receives funds, journal entries, etc. Now, I want you to keep in mind at the Trade Center, we have our own set of financial books, and we do not get any general funds. This current position currently is also taking on the responsibilities of serving as the HR liaison at the Trade Center. This position must have working knowledge of HR law, knowledge of workers' comp, FMLA guidelines, and other additional information. This current position also enters all employee information in our database and maintains all important employee files. This current position also maintains and prepares the weekly payroll, monitors all vacation, sick, and any comp time. Since a good portion of this job is similar to what an employment coordinator or administrative coordinator does, we feel that this reclassification of an office manager to a G14 will be more sufficient to the description of this job.
Okay, any questions on that particular request? That adds 2535, am I looking at the right one
That's correct.
to the budget? Okay. And you had two others listed? Those are new?
Those are new positions.
Okay. NEW, sure is. Any other questions? Oh, we've got one. Counselor Huff.
Yes, sir.
Hello, hello, hello to the whole crew, Mr. Campbell and staff. Haley, welcome, and just wanted to personally welcome you for your first budget. Very well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Handled very well. And glad to see my old friend back in place. We'll get a chance to see each other, a few events down there, everything. I think I talked so long last time I missed saying hello to you. But everything looks good, and just continue to plan, have everything in writing for us so we know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it should be smooth sailing.
Always.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
All right, I think that's it.
right.
Ms. Henderson,
Thank
wonderful
you.
name, by the way.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. Good to see y'all.
Thank you, Claire. All right, so the last reclassification in the proposed budget is for the Civic Center, and they are requesting to reclassify an event coordinator, G15, to an event services manager, G17.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Ready for questions if you'd like to throw them at me. This position was put on the books last year around this time. It was approved by UGA, and just going off their recommendation to move this person up to the G17. They're acting in a capacity as assisting with bookings, overseeing all the part-time staff, taking on tremendous responsibility for the event days as well as days leading up to the events.
Councilor Thomas?
Ms. Alexander, both the Trade Center positions and the Civic Center positions are from those dedicated funds, not from the general fund. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, hang on, Councilor Davis?
Director, will you be coming back anytime soon?
Whenever you need me to.
Not a big
Good
help.
answer, good answer. No, really, are you coming back to talk to us about your department?
Eventually, I will. There are several things that I've been asked to look at coming in from a 30,000-foot view of the entire operation.
Okay.
And I know that there had been discussions previously from the former director regarding some positions that he thought would best serve the facilities, the Civic Center and specifically, as well as the ice rink. And I'm looking at those right now.
Okay, all right, well, I'm going to yield, Mr. Budget Chair.
And Councilor, we'll have him come back and kind of give you a view of what the next fiscal year looks like from a booking standpoint.
Thank you, sir. I'll wait.
Considering the Cottonmouth hockey situation. We'll bring him back.
Okay, good. Thanks. Councilor Huff?
Also, welcome to you on your first budget.
Thank you, sir. Well, first budget with the city of Columbus.
Yeah, we had a sidebar after the last time I was down there for an event, and I thank you for all the information, and it kind of clicked on the ride home, what was going on, so thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome.
I
And
appreciate you.
happy to have you all down at the Civic Center at any time. And we're hoping to put some really fun stuff in the
And then
facility.
we'll talk about our Florida connection next week.
You got it.
Thanks.
Well, We're glad to have you in Columbus. We hope you're acclimating well, and we're excited about what your presence is going to mean for the Civic Center.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to many, many years, as
Good
many
deal.
as the good Lord will allow me.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Councilor Thomas.
I wanted to ask Ms. Allen, what did you say happened with the Metro? Are we going to hear from them late? I'm sorry,
It's a new position.
It's a new position. It's a new position is what she said. And I don't think we're discussing the new positions right now. Only the reclasses are being discussed right now. But we'll discuss it whenever you get ready.
No, that's quite all right. You don't want to discuss it, that's okay.
Well, I mean, same thing with the Trade Center. They were new, and that's why you didn't discuss those. They were listed as well, so. And that's why the budget chair spelled N-E-W. He learned how to spell it a few minutes ago.
I did.
New.
I took some help.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're coming up. Now, when are the new positions going to be discussed? I think that was the second part of Councilor Thomas's concern and
We can bring
question.
it next week if you want. We can bring it next week.
Okay.
We have slots available
All
next
right.
week still. So I'll reach out to those departments
Yeah, I mean,
with the new positions
okay.
and requests. But there's one thing that's not listed on this, that's not in the mayor's proposed budget that really just sort of came about within the last week. The Civic Center has the Civic Center has an electrician position that's a grade 13, and they'd like to change that title to an HVAC tech grade 13. It's currently vacant, and there's no one in the position. And we'd like to make that change, that title only change as part of the budget ordinance.
No grade change.
There's no grade
nothing- Nothing
change,
but
and it's
the
currently
title of the
vacant.
job.
It's the title of the job.
That's
It's
for
changing.
advertising purposes, for
That's
trying to get the right guy or
That's
gal?
correct. I wanted to make mention of that because it's not on the list.
Any questions about that? That seems pretty straightforward. All right, well, thanks.
Just something a little more specific for the job responsibilities needed.
Absolutely. If it helps you fill it, I think that's great. Well, I think we got healthcare, and we skipped over the vehicle replacement as well. If we have slots left for the vehicle replacement, it might be better to take that on when we've got more members present. I think that's something that everybody had questions about, and I just think it's getting kind of late, and I'd hate for us to.
Well, we can certainly bring that vehicle replacement back at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and do healthcare, because that should take only 3 minutes. It's
Yeah,
just
right.
it's a quick one.
Well, I mean, if we can do the healthcare now, I mean.
Well, that's why I say it's about 3 minutes,
Yeah,
if
that's fine.
no more than 5.
Absolutely.
Council, when we presented the healthcare update a week or so ago and talked about what we were planning for in FY18, we also intended to mention one of the things that we are doing. It's a good problem that we have in a growing problem in terms of the number of members that attend the Health and Wellness Center. So we have a good problem in that the number of folks that are attending there is growing. But as you grow, that also presents some issues. The slight issue that we have is we wanted to present to you a policy, a new policy that we feel like we need at the Health and Wellness Center, and it is a cancellation and a no-show policy. It is a typical policy that you would see at any doctor's office that you will go to. Basically, it says they expect that you honor your appointment, that you come on time when you say you're going to come, and that if you're not going to show, that you call at a reasonable time and say, I'm not going to show. And if you need to reschedule your appointment, you reschedule. So that's what this policy is. It puts in place a policy at the Health and Wellness Center called a cancellation and no-show policy. With that policy, it also does have a penalty. If after your third visit, you go your first call out, or the first time you don't show and don't call, there's nothing. The second time you don't show, you don't call. But if you continue that pattern, what happens is when you don't show up for a scheduled visit, that's a spot that somebody else could have had. Someone else that had a child that was sick, somebody else that really needed to get in that time. But because you, as a patient, failed to cancel that visit, then they missed that slot. So that's what we're trying to tweak, because we have so many folks that are coming and utilizing the Health and Wellness Center. We want everybody to get the best opportunity that they can. So this policy puts in place a no-show and cancellation policy that puts a little teeth into it. At a certain point, the employee would be charged a fee if they fail to show up and they fail to cancel their visit.
And, Mr. Chairman, this is really consistent with what they're already doing in the private sector. You may know that. I had a call on my answer machine, I think last week, to remind me of an appointment and to remind me if I'm a no-show, there's a $25 fee.
No, I think that's completely appropriate. One question, if the employee is the one that gets suspended for 6 months and they have a child that needs to go to the wellness center, that would not impact that child's ability?
That's correct.
Okay.
The dependents could still
It's
go.
just the individual that didn't show for it?
That is correct.
Okay.
Just the individual that did not show.
All right, that seems fair. Any comments, questions? What are the
8:30
hours?
till 5, Monday through Friday. 8:30 till 5, Monday through Friday.
And you do need to call, it's just like going to your doctor, you do need to call a couple days in advance.
Well, they are very generous. As long as you
really?
call by 9 o'clock that morning to cancel for that day, you're good.
And that's what I was going to say. Our policy is not as strict as the private sector policy. So if if I have an appointment tomorrow, I mean, it's understandable that you may, something may come up in the middle of the night and you can't make the appointment tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. But if you call by 9 o'clock a.m. tomorrow morning, you're good.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty generous.
Yeah.
It is.
It allows them to reschedule, and for somebody else that may need to call in, then they can fill that slot.
You know, I think the more, I really can't help but believe the more our employees find out about the different types of uses they can access that health and wellness center for, I think it's going to do a tremendous job of holding down their out-of-pocket.
Yes.
And it'll help us because we'll get the critical mass because more folks will be going. And by us, I don't mean the city government, I just mean it'll help the entire population of employees.
Right.
So, thank you, Retha.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to postpone the vehicle replacement until next week. All right, any final thoughts, any questions? All right, second, moving second. All in favor, say let's go. There we go.